Chapter 3988. Although Yi Xian had summoned the Shenong cauldron and chased after him, the Thunder Emperor seal was still suspended high in the sky outside the energy barrier of the Demon Emperor's 3 stars. It poured out an endless sea of lightning that enveloped an area of 10,000 miles, trapping the rainbow flame lightning sparrow that was at the immortal stage. Although this rainbow flame lightning sparrow was extraordinary, not only did it have the cultivation strength of the immortal realm, but its bloodline talent also contained the thunder attribute, so it had a stronger resistance to the power of thunder compared to other existences of the same realm. But even so, facing the Rai D seal, it should have died long ago. The Rai D seal was a natural thunder source treasure, commanding the thunder of the world. Even if its bloodline contained the thunder attribute, it could only be suppressed. And the reason why it was still alive and was still being blasted into pieces by the endless thunder of the Rai D seal was all because of Yi Xian. This kind of rainbow flame lightning sparrow was extremely rare, and its bloodline contained the thunder attribute, so it would be a pity to kill it just like that. Therefore, Yi Xian ordered the Rai D seal to keep it trapped. He planned to take care of this rainbow flame lightning sparrow after getting rid of the flying centipede. Screech! Screech! Regarding all this, the rainbow flame lightning sparrow, who was firmly trapped in the sea of lightning, obviously knew and saw through all this. As an undying existence with a lightning attribute bloodline, the instant his body was enveloped and sealed by the endless sea of lightning sprinkled by the Lightning Emperor seal, he was already sure that if the other party wanted to, he could completely annihilate him with a single thought. And now it was still alive, which undoubtedly explained the problem. At this moment, although the rainbow flame lightning sparrow was trapped in the sea of lightning, it could still sense everything that was happening outside the sea of lightning. With the death of the black fiend devil and the escape of the flying centipede, its heart had sunk to the bottom of the valley, and it no longer had the slightest bit of fighting spirit. Its only thought was to take advantage of the temporary absence of the little god of death to escape from this sea of lightning and quickly escape far away. Long and shrill cries continuously sounded out from within the sea of lightning. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed, but no matter how the rainbow flame lightning sparrow struggled, it was unable to take a single step out of the sea of lightning. It was simply unable to move in the slightest. Seeing this scene, the countless demon experts and clansmen in the defensive star array of the 3 stars of the Devil Emperor had long been speechless. At this time, the senior members of the demon royal family, led by the current Devil Emperor Mo Wen-Tian, gradually broke free from the state of petrification at this time. Looking at each other, their faces were stiff, and their tone was filled with hesitation and sighs, revealing a strong sense of disbelief. Oh my God, are we dreaming? A domain old monster is chasing an immortal old monster. It's not like he hasn't killed one before. He has already killed 2 before, and trapped 1, okay? This is really head up. This old man suddenly has a kind of feeling of doubt. To defy the heavens. No, this is clearly already defying the heavens. For immortal old monsters, 2 dead, 1 trapped, and 1 escaped, this is really incredible. Should we go out and help? Ling Hu, little friend chasing alone. It feels a bit inappropriate. The last sentence was said by a star lord of the demon race. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt that something was wrong. The senior members of the demon royal family all turned their heads to look at him, and their eyes were simply looking at an idiot, which made him immediately blush. Help! Helping a domain old monster to chase an immortal old monster. How dare he have this kind of idea? He was clearly going against the heavens' rhythm. In the void 20 million miles away from the inner defense circle of the Demon Emperor 3 stars. At this moment, the flying centipede that had been fleeing with its head down no longer moved forward. Instead, it stopped in this area of the void. However, it kept circling around and using its nimble body to bring Yi Xian around this area of the void. Running away was useless. With Yi Xian's current strength of a domain lord, the Shenong cauldron's full strength had exceeded the limit of the immortal old monster's physical body to cross the void, and he would be caught in the end. Rather than this, it was better to just stay and fight with his life. It had to be said that the immortal old monster was really extraordinary, and since the flying centipede could fly, it showed that its advantage in speed was absolutely obvious. This immortal old monster's bloodline evolution had reached the peak of this species, and the 9 pairs of huge wings on its back were a kind of symbol. When the 9 pairs of wings were spread out, not only was its speed faster than an ordinary immortal old monster, its degree of flexibility was also far beyond that. Although the Shenong cauldron's speed was fast, it was still too large. Moreover, Yi Xian's cultivation was limited, so he was still rather inexperienced in controlling it. He was still able to charge forward blindly, but now, He was following behind the immortal stage flying centipede as he circled around in the air. He was a little unable to hold on. In terms of flexibility, he was completely not a match for the immortal old monster with the Shenong cauldron chasing behind. Seeing this scene, the flying centipede was completely relieved. His opponent's method was indeed heaven-defying, but he hadn't put away the innate lightning source treasure, and the golden battle talisman that could stimulate the violet tide of time couldn't be used in this situation where he was constantly changing directions to form a deterrent. In that case, he chose to stay and poison the other party to death, which was basically half a success. Although this brat had the dense mist of the Medicine King cauldron protecting his body, the flying centipede was very confident in the poisonous mist it secreted. He firmly believed that as long as the poisonous mist in this void reached a certain density, even if it was protected by the power of the Medicine King cauldron, it would not be able to directly poison him to death. The other party. However, it was still possible to slightly affect him and make him in a dejected state. That was enough for him. At that time, when the other party's condition was not right, as an immortal old monster, he could attack at any time and kill him in one strike. These thoughts flashed through his mind, and the flying centipede immediately laughed sinisterly. Without any hesitation, the poison sacs in his body that had long been fully activated opened in an instant. Strands of strange black and green poison followed the countless densely distributed poison holes on his body and slowly and continuously began to spread out. Outward release. During this process, the flying centipede's figure didn't stop for a single moment. It maintained a high-speed movement, but it didn't go far away. It only brought Xianxia, who was behind it, to circle in the air. This was because only in this way would the poison mist released from its body be dense in the air. Higher and higher. Hiss. Hiss. Chapter 3989. Hiss. Hiss. The faint sound attracted Xianxia's attention. He immediately felt his scalp go numb. This miasma could even corrode the void of the universe. As the dark green miasma slowly spread from the flying centipede's body, dense hissing sounds immediately rang out in the void it passed through. It was very faint, but it was strange and hair-raising. It was these strange sounds that attracted his attention. Xianxia's deepest impression of poisons was the poison of undying indestructibility. The universe zombies that were still wreaking havoc in the third universe controlled by the two human camps were the products of the poison of undying indestructibility. This strange poison originated from a terrifying treasure called the Pearl of Undying Indestructibility. There was still a small sealed cavern at the bottom of the farmer god cauldron, where a perfect pearl of undying indestructibility was preserved. In addition, Xianxia also had 6 drops of the poison of undying indestructibility mixed with the all-evil origin elixir. These 2 things were the most poisonous things in Xianxia's possession. Even so, the Pearl of Undying Indestructibility and the All-Evil Origin Elixir probably did not possess the power to corrode the void of the universe. This did not mean that the toxicity of these 2 poisons was weak. On the contrary, both the Pearl of Undying Indestructibility and the All-Evil Origin Elixir were definitely of the highest grade, rarely seen in the outside world. However, the miasma emitted from the immortal realm flying centipede was clearly of a high grade as well. Even if it was not comparable to the poison of undying indestructibility and the all-evil origin elixir, it was probably not far off in some aspects. This was definitely the 3rd most poisonous creature that Xianxia had ever seen since he entered the starry sky. Although the flying centipede was not a powerful species, not only had this flying centipede's cultivation reached the immortal realm, its bloodline had also evolved to the peak. It had 9 pairs of wings on its back. It was like a fox beast. Ordinary foxes only had 1 tail. If they could grow 9 tails, they would become blood-tailed foxes. Their bloodline would mutate and become a different species. It was the same for this flying centipede with 9 pairs of wings. With the evolution of his bloodline, he could no longer be considered a flying centipede. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call him a flying centipede. Xianxia was filled with apprehension towards an existence whose bloodline had evolved to the point that it had transformed into a completely different species. This was especially so when he saw the terrifying poisonous mist emanating from its body. It was actually able to corrode even the void of the universe. Xianxia's eyelids twitched uncontrollably when he saw this. Just as he was hesitating on what to do next, the Shenong cauldron under his feet suddenly trembled slightly, revealing a clear sense of excitement. Xianxia had long since refined this cauldron, so it had a telepathic connection with him. Facing this strange situation, it was stunned for a moment, but soon understood and was overjoyed. This was really too unexpected. He was having a headache about how to deal with this strange poisonous fog that could even corrode the void of the universe. He didn't expect that the farmer god cauldron would directly give him a hint. This poisonous fog, not only could the farmer god cauldron swallow and refine, but it also happened to need it. What was there to hesitate about? This was definitely a good thing. The farmer god cauldron wasn't an ordinary primordial supreme treasure. It was an important artifact of the era. A resource that could make it need it and give out a hint with excitement was definitely extraordinary. Xian instantly cut off any thoughts of killing the flying centipede that had evolved its bloodline to its peak, and had already transformed into a completely different species. Since the strange poisonous fog that the flying centipede spat out was beneficial to the farmer god cauldron, then he should capture it alive and imprison it at the bottom of the volcano in the central region of the farmer god cauldron. He should treat it like a milk cow and extract its poison for a long period of time. After making his decision, Xian immediately took action. With a wave of his hand, a suction force instantly appeared from the mouth of the farmer god cauldron and began to absorb the strange poisonous fog in the void of the outside world. However, in order to prevent the flying centipede from discovering the abnormality, Xian didn't dare to directly absorb the poisonous fog. Instead, he planned to do it slowly. All the strange poisonous fog that was absorbed into the farmer god cauldron was immediately refined by Xian by activating the power of the farmer god cauldron's field. At the same time, Xian also paid close attention to this process because he was extremely curious as to why the farmer god cauldron needed to absorb this strange poisonous fog. He even had his own speculations. The final result made him very excited. The truth was actually in line with his speculations. The reason why the farmer god cauldron needed this strange poisonous fog was because the farmer god unusual flame in the central region of the farmer god cauldron needed to absorb it to evolve itself. In other words, the farmer god unusual flame, which had evolved into a 5-colored flame, was very likely to directly evolve into a 6-colored flame after absorbing this strange poisonous fog. If that was really the case, then the additional color of the flame would most likely be the same as the strange poisonous fog, which was a dark green color. As for its power, there was almost no suspense. It would definitely increase the effect and attribute of the poisonous flame. Leaping from a 5-colored flame to a 6-colored flame meant that its power would increase greatly. This time, the farmer god unusual flame would have an additional attribute of poisonous flame, and this poisonous flame could even corrode the void of the universe. All of this meant that the farmer god's 6-colored flame, after completing its evolution, was destined to be even more powerful than before. For Xian, this was definitely an unexpected surprise. However, all of this was just an expectation. It wasn't much different from the so-called illusion because the 5-colored flame was currently only absorbing and refining this strange poisonous fog that originated from the flying centipede. It hadn't really evolved into a 6-colored flame. Even though everything was progressing, only the heavens knew how much of this strange poisonous fog it would need to absorb and refine in order to truly evolve into a 6-colored flame. If it required a huge amount, then it would definitely take a very long time. Moreover, there was another problem before him. What if the flying centipede that was leading him around in circles noticed that something was off, turned around, and fled once more? Moreover, he was able to escape successfully. Wouldn't he be on the verge of tears? Where can I find it? When he realized this problem, Xian instantly became anxious. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't allow this flying centipede to escape. Not only could he not allow it to escape, he couldn't kill it. Capturing it alive was his only choice. When he thought up to here, Xian instantly sighed in his heart, and he felt like his head had instantly swelled. That was an eternal realm expert. If it was merely annihilation, then under the circumstances that he utilized all his ability, he was entirely capable of accomplishing it. But if it was to capture it alive... Cough. Cough. I'm really looking down on it a little too much. No matter how weak a dignified eternal realm expert was, there was a limit to it. Under the precondition that it was determined to flee, yet it was still captured alive by a region lord. Such a situation simply didn't make sense. Chapter 3990. The reason why Xian had suddenly slowed down the Shenong Cauldron's pursuit was because he wanted to lure the flying centipede to come closer and attack him. When the distance was close enough, he would have the opportunity to activate the Shenong Cauldron's domain power and directly trap the flying centipede. The flying centipede would be sucked into the cauldron's space. If he could do that, the flying centipede would not be able to escape. He would directly trap him in the center of the volcano in the central region of the cauldron. As long as the flying centipede's strength had not reached the level where he could forcibly destroy the domain inside the Shinnon cauldron, he would definitely not be able to escape. In Yi Xian's opinion, the feasibility of this plan was very high. Because he had already seen that the flying centipede had suddenly stopped running away, and instead stayed in this void. As he led him in circles, he released the strange poisonous fog in his body. The flying centipede's ultimate goal was to use this strange poisonous fog to trap him. After all, other than the fact that the Demon King's royal brother Mo Jiufeng was originally in existence that the flying centipede had to kill, Yi Xian had also displayed many terrifying abilities in this battle. For example, the battle talisman that could trigger the purple gold tide of time, the innate thunder source treasure Rai D seal, and the purple gold thunder source that could kill the baleful dark demon tiger. And so on. These things were all treasures and resources that could threaten the lives of immortal old monsters. It was impossible to say that the flying centipede was not tempted. As long as Yi Xian could make the flying centipede believe that he had fallen into the trap of the poisonous fog and was in a bad state, the flying centipede, who was circling around in circles, would occasionally look back to check the situation. There was a 90% chance that it would not take the opportunity to escape, but instead turn around and reap everything. For Yi Xian, this was also a gamble. He was betting that the flying centipede would not leave. Otherwise, once the flying centipede took this opportunity to tear through the void and leave, he would really have nowhere to look for him even if he cried. Yi Xian gritted his teeth. After making his decision, Yi Xian immediately took action. The Shinnon cauldron, which had been following behind the flying centipede at an extremely fast speed, suddenly slowed down and even slightly swayed a few times. However, the Shinnon cauldron did not stop absorbing the strange poisonous fog during this process. The density of the strange fog in the void had reached a certain level, so it could not be wasted. Moreover, this active absorption might be what the centipede wanted to see. It would most likely think that it was the corrosive effect of the strange poisonous fog's power. You fell for it so quickly? Yi Xian's eyes was on the others on the cauldron. His did not immediately turn to look. Did not immediately turn immediately. He did not immediately turn, but he did not immediately turn. 2. It was as if he was spying. The sinister look in his eyes made one feel very uncomfortable. Yi Xian sighed inwardly. He could roughly analyze the flying centipede's temperament just by looking at its eyes. It was definitely the suspicious type. If it wanted to deliberately show weakness to lure the enemy in, it would probably be very difficult to succeed. Even if the other party roughly believed in Yi Xian's condition and fell into a slump due to the influence of this strange poison mist, with his suspicious temperament, even if he wanted to reap the benefits, this flying centipede definitely wouldn't rashly approach him. The flying centipede would most likely use some method to test him first. For example, it would use a divine ability to kill him from a safe distance. Yi Xian had seen too many of such situations in his life. Therefore, he could basically analyze what was going to happen next just by looking at the flying centipede's eyes. This was really F***ed up. If the flying centipede was really so cautious and insisted on using some method to kill Yi Xian from a safe distance before approaching him, was he supposed to grit his teeth and bear the brunt of the attack? Yi Xian wouldn't even be willing to be injured by the flying centipede, let alone kill him. Obviously, this plan was aborted. Although it was feasible, the flying centipede was overly cautious and suspicious. It was destined to be impossible for it to succeed. Just as Yi Xian was feeling depressed, a familiar system notification suddenly sounded in his mind. It was asking Yi Xian if he could immediately absorb the strange poisonous fog. It said that it had great benefits for tempering the body, and that its effects surpassed the hell ant liquid secreted by the hell ant tribe. However, it was poisonous fog after all and couldn't be directly absorbed into the body. It had to be refined and purified by the 5-colored flames of the Shinnon cauldron before it could be used. Since there's no way to lure the flying centipede in, then I can only follow closely behind him and absorb as much of the poisonous fog as possible. No matter what, I can't let him escape. As he muttered to himself, Yi Xian immediately gave up on his previous plan. He decided to take a step back and reap the benefits in front of him first. The body-tempering effect of the poisonous fog was better than the hell ant liquid of the hell ant tribe. Moreover, this was the first time Yi Xian had used it. The effects would definitely be better, so he naturally couldn't miss it. Thinking of this, he immediately ordered the devouring system in his body to start devouring immediately. However, it didn't devour directly from the surrounding void. Instead, It devoured from the interior of the volcano in the central region of the Shenong Cauldron. Before this, the Shenong Cauldron had been absorbing the strange poisonous fog in the surrounding void. A portion of it had been stored in the central region of the volcano and had been refined and purified by the Shenong five-colored flames. It was just right for him to use it directly. At the same time, he waved his hand and took out some netherworld furnace lotion and 3 drops of all evil origin liquid from the undying world in his body. He also cut off a large piece of flesh from the purple-gold void rat's corpse of the quasi-ancient great being and roasted it with the Shenong five-colored flames before swallowing it in large mouthfuls. These few resources had become something he had to consume every time he broke through. They were all top-grade resources. When they entered his stomach, they immediately mixed with the strange poisonous fog that had been purified by the five-colored flames into Yixian's body by the devouring system. Together, they turned into an extremely hot energy that quickly circulated in Yixian's limbs and bones. The clanking of chains quickly sounded, accompanied by the pain of every inch of his flesh and bones being torn apart. This time, Yixian had to control the Shenong Cauldron with his mind as he broke through. It returned to its original speed and continued to chase after the flying centipede to prevent it from taking advantage of the situation. If there was a chance to escape, it had to be said that the breakthrough this time was much more difficult than before. However, at the same time, once the breakthrough was successful, the benefits that Yixian would obtain would definitely be greater than before. This was the principle of, you get what you put in. Chapter 3991. What's going on? Wasn't he on the verge of collapsing from the poison just now? Why did he recover in the blink of an eye? Is it because the more poison is used, the more ferocious he becomes? Yixian's weak state had only lasted for a short period of a few breaths of time before he recovered quickly. Moreover, even the Medicine King Cauldron that had suddenly slowed down had displayed extreme speed once more and chased after him. The flying centipede's enormous eyes instantly flickered with a dark glow while he muttered to himself and analyzed the reason for this strange scene before him. That scene from before was absolutely not fake. Otherwise, if that kid intended to do something, then how could he have given up so quickly and immediately recovered his state and speed? Looks like the poison mist is still effective against him. Even if his figure is protected by the 9-colored mist at the mouth of the Medicine King Cauldron, he was still affected to a certain extent. His sudden bad state from before is the best proof of this. However, this fellow possesses too many top-rate resources. If I'm not wrong, the healing treasures he withdrew with a flip of his hand and tossed into his mouth included the nether furnace lotion that appeared in the quintessence region of all evil. There seemed to be a few drops of something with an even purer aura than the nether furnace lotion. It isn't the evil origin elixir? Hiss. Damn it. That kid's luck is too heaven-defying. He actually obtained the legendary evil origin elixir. Besides that, there's that huge piece of flesh that's obviously roasted. It emanates the aura of treasures, and it's absolutely the aura of an almighty figure from the quasi-primordial era. Damn it! He's actually feasting on the flesh and blood of an almighty figure from the quasi-primordial era. When he spoke up to hear, the flying centipede's eyes had grown even brighter, and his gaze revealed a green glow. He was clearly tempted to the extreme. At this moment, he simply wished for nothing more than to immediately turn around and plunder Yixian from the outside to the inside before he could vent his hatred. It's too infuriating. A tiny region lord is like an ant, yet every single thing he produces, no matter if it's treasures or resources, is actually something that even I, an eternal realm expert, covets yet doesn't possess at all. This is simply unreasonable. In an instant, the flying centipede's idea of staying behind to think of a way to kill the other party with poison so that he could obtain all the treasures and resources on the other party became even firmer. On one hand, it was because he saw that Yixian had more top-grade treasures and resources in his possession. On the other hand, it was because Yixian had been poisoned to the point of being in a bad condition in such a short period of time. In his panic, he had no choice but to immediately take out a large amount of top-grade resources of similar quality to expel the poison and recover. This meant that the effects of his poison mist on the other party's body were quite significant. Since that was the case, it meant that there was a high chance of him being poisoned to death. There was no reason not to give it a try. This won't do. I have to increase the amount of poisonous fog. This kid definitely has a lot of top-grade resources and all kinds of heavenly treasures on him. If the poisonous fog doesn't corrode him enough, once he's in a bad state, he'll immediately swallow heavenly treasures to recover. If this goes on, won't he eat all of them? While muttering to himself, the The flying centipede nodded repeatedly and agreed with him. These top-notch resources and heavenly materials and earthly treasures belong to me, and they will change hands soon. How can he swallow them all? It's simply too wasteful. I can't let him off so easily. And if I increase the amount of poisonous fog, the density of the poisonous fog will increase to a certain extent, and the corrosive effect on the demonic ape real body will also increase greatly. This is the same principle as using strong medicine. Once the strong medicine is used, this guy will be poisoned on the spot. He won't even have the chance to take out all kinds of top-grade resources and heavenly materials and earthly treasures to recover. In this way, not only can I save my resources and treasures, but I can also end this battle as soon as possible. If the demonic tribe's ancestor appears, it will be troublesome. Thinking of this, the flying centipede's eyelids twitched. Without hesitation, he immediately increased the amount and speed of the poisonous fog in his body by at least several times. Hiss! Hiss, hiss, hiss! As more and more of the strange poisonous fog spread out from its body at an even faster speed, the hissing sounds that made one's scalp tingle became denser and more intense as the flying centipede flew through the void at an extremely fast speed. The flying centipede didn't leave either. He continued to chase after the Shennon cauldron as they circled around the corner of the void. None of the strange poisonous mist from his body managed to spread out. They all stayed in this corner of the void. Gradually, due to the increasing density of the poisonous fog, this corner of the void became darker, as if it was suddenly dyed black by a large mass of ink. All this was exactly what Xianxia wanted. He was overjoyed, but he didn't show it on his face. He secretly activated the power of the Shennon cauldron's internal field, and the speed and progress of absorbing the strange poisonous fog from the void around him also became faster. Time passed quickly. Xianxia activated the Shennon cauldron and followed the flying centipede closely. More than 10 minutes passed before he knew it. During the entire process, the clattering sounds of chains were echoing inside the true devil ape's body. In the end, when the flying centipede, which had been leading Xianxia in circles, turned around and looked at Xianxia again, 2 humming chains were echoing inside Xianxia's body. The 2 thick potential shackles were finally broken. At this moment, the system notification that Xianxia had been expecting echoed in his head. Ding! Congratulations to the host for making a breakthrough in the ancient void technique. Your current level is the 3rd level of the Star Lord state. Ding! Congratulations to the host for making a breakthrough in the physical state. Your current level is the 3rd level of the Star Lord state. Another 2 consecutive breakthroughs. The effects of this strange poisonous fog were indeed extraordinary. After Xianxia stepped into the Star Lord state, he was able to welcome another 2 consecutive breakthroughs with just 1 body tempering. When his original body was a 1st-level Star Lord, his true form of the ancient ape demon was a 6th-level Star Lord. Once he used the 9 transformations of the devil ape and reached the 4th transformation, he would instantly become a domain lord old monster. Even though his original self had made another breakthrough and reached the 3rd level of the Star Lord state, according to his calculations, the primordial devil ape should be in the 8th level of the Star Lord state after its bloodline was activated. Once he entered the 4th transformation of the ancient ape demon, his peak combat ability would reach the 3rd level of the State Lord state, which was already at the peak of the beginning stage of the State Lord state. He would reach the middle stage of the State Lord state with 1 more minor breakthrough. The current Xianxia was the true body of the devil ape with 3 heads and 6 arms, and he was in the 4th transformation of the devil ape. As a result, following this breakthrough, the aura within his body rapidly rose, and in the blink of an eye, he rose from the 1st level of the Domain Lord to the 3rd level of the Domain Lord. Chapter 3992. What's going on? Why hasn't he been overpowered by the poison and has actually become even more ferocious? When he turned around to look, the flying centipede just happened to notice the scene of Xianxia's cultivation instantly rising from the 1st rank of the Region Lord Realm to the 3rd rank of the Region Lord Realm, and he was stunned on the spot. His mouth was wide open and his face was covered in a dumbstruck expression. At this moment, half of his mind was filled with water and the other half was flour. Just thinking about it slightly caused his mind to instantly become mush. Damn it! He actually concealed his cultivation. Even if he was beaten to death, it was absolutely impossible for him to think that Xianxia had just broken through because it was too shocking. A Region Lord Realm Junior that was like an ant actually had the leisure to break through while pursuing an Eternal Realm expert. This was truly too shocking, and it was utterly impossible for him to accept. So, after being stunned for a moment, The flying centipede quickly determined that Yi Xian had held back earlier. But now, he was on the verge of being unable to hold on because of the corrosion of the poison mist, so he'd unsealed that portion of his strength. This was the best explanation for the strange state that the flying centipede was in. Compared to Yi Xian breaking through on the spot during the battle, this was obviously more believable and easier to accept. When he thought like this, the heart that had just risen to his throat immediately calmed down, and the savage smile on his face grew even more savage. So what if he concealed his cultivation? Unsealing his concealed cultivation at a time like this can only mean that this kid is on the verge of being unable to hold on. This is just right. With the strength of the poison mist, I presume it won't be long before I'll be able to take him down and end this battle. When he thought up to here, the flying centipede's spirits were instantly refreshed, and he activated the countless poison sacs within his body with all his might. In an instant, even more strange poison mist instantly sprayed out from the countless pores on his enormous body. To the flying centipede, this poison mist was similar to the hellish ant liquid secreted by the hellish ant clan. It was an accumulation of innate bloodline ability. It could be said that the more the flying centipede released, the greater the impact on its body. If it had released all of its poison, the flying centipede would not have died on the spot. After all, the countless poison sacs in its body would slowly secrete poisonous fog and preserve it in the poison sacs. However, if all of them were to be emptied in a short period of time, the consequences would still be quite serious. To make an analogy, it was actually similar to lying on a woman's body and being completely squeezed until he was completely exhausted. His legs would definitely turn to jelly. He would have to eat a good meal and rest for a period of time before he could recover and regain his vigor. The flying centipede was naturally well aware of this, but he was like a fish that had been hooked, and he could not stop at all. At the very beginning, he first released a small amount of poison mist, then increased it to a large amount. Now that he saw that the other party was about to be unable to hold on, he used all his strength to release the poison mist without any regard for the consequences. He only hoped that he would be able to completely poison the other party in a short period of time. In his opinion, after all the poison mist in the countless poison sacs in his body was released, even though he would fall into a period of weakness, it did not matter. As long as he could follow closely behind, the abominable brat, who was barely holding on, would be completely poisoned. At that time, without his control, the Medicine King cauldron, which was sticking behind him like a dogskin plaster, would naturally stop. At that time, he only needed to turn around and rush back for a short distance, use his divine abilities, and kill the opponent who had been poisoned and had lost consciousness from a safe distance. Next would be the harvest. As long as he quickly took action and plundered all the treasures and resources on the other party's body, he might even be able to swallow a portion of them on the spot and more or less recover a portion of his foundation. At that time, even if the patriarch of the demon race descended, in a one-on-one battle, even if he was not a match for him, he could still guarantee that he would be able to escape unscathed. Yes. It had to be said that the old monster's abacus was really loud. He had considered and calculated all aspects. It was simply flawless. Everything was taken care of, and it seemed extremely perfect and perfect. However, he would never have thought that he was wrong from the beginning. This also meant that all the deductions and guesses that followed were destined to run counter to each other. Hiss! Hiss, hiss, hiss! At this moment, as the flying centipede ignored the consequences and used all its strength to expel the strange poison mist that was stored in the countless poison sacs in its body, through the countless pores on the surface of its huge body, as if it was free, the hissing sounds that were already extremely dense in the surrounding void instantly rang out again. This feeling was like a huge pot of oil. The oil inside had already been burned, but a drizzle suddenly fell from the sky. Countless fine mist fell on the boiling oil surface, splashing countless scalp-numbing crackling sounds. In fact, even this corner of the void had turned pitch black in a short period of time because the density of the strange poison mist was too high. It was simply impossible to see one's fingers in front of one's face. If it weren't for the fact that both Yi Xian and the flying centipede were starry sky experts with divine sense, at this time, in such a pitch-black environment, even their vision would have been completely restricted. However, all this was tantamount to a huge surprise for Yi Xian, like a pie falling from the sky. He was just worried that the strange poison mist in the surrounding void was not dense enough. Although he had used this opportunity to temper his body and break through to the next realm, the Shenong cauldron's five-colored flame was still in the process of evolving. It was rapidly absorbing the strange poison mist in the surrounding void. Now, Yi Xian was most worried that the flying centipede would notice something strange and stop releasing the poison in his body. If that was the case, the five-colored flame's evolution opportunity would undoubtedly come to a premature end. The loss was too great. But now, all his worries were gone. He didn't know if the other party's brain had been flooded with water. He was clearly using this poison mist to temper his body, breaking through to the next realm on the spot, and reaping huge benefits. He was actually increasing the amount of poison mist released, as if he was afraid that he didn't reap enough benefits. There was probably no one else who was so generous and righteous. Sighing in his heart, Yi Xian suddenly had a thought. His divine sense subconsciously extended beneath his feet, entering the mouth of the Shenong cauldron and directly entering the heart of the volcano in the central region of the cauldron. At that moment, he suddenly felt a sense of enlightenment. It was as if the Shenong cauldron under his feet had become different in an instant. The connection between it and his mind was clearer and more vivid. This was very likely a sign that the Shenong five-colored flame had finally completed its evolution and was advancing to the six-colored flame. With this strong expectation, Yi Xian entered the central region volcano in the cauldron space with a wisp of divine sense. With just a glance, he became excited. Chapter 3993. The six-colored flame was finally complete. At this point, the power of the Shenong cauldron increased again, and the additional color happened to be black, representing the poisonous flame attribute. Moreover, the Shenong six-colored flame already had the attribute of poisonous flame. This was definitely a huge breakthrough. Just in the aspect of roasting flesh and eating, there was already an unexpected change. Before this, Yi Xian had used the Shenong strange flame to roast flesh and blood, increasing the effect of the roasted flesh and blood, purifying and condensing it. But now, as long as he was willing, he could use the current Shenong six-colored flame to roast flesh and blood again, and focus on the effect of the poisonous flame. Not only would the quality of the roasted flesh and blood not improve, but it would also contain a strange poison. Moreover, there was no abnormality on the surface at all. It was still golden yellow and dripping with oil, and it was still fragrant. It was still appetizing to look at and smell it. Even if one swallowed it, they would not feel anything unusual. But when all the swallowed flesh and blood turned into pure energy in the body and circulated in the limbs and bones, the toxicity of the poisonous flame would show. At this point, even if one reacted, it would not be of much use. Even if one was not poisoned to death on the spot, he would probably lose a few layers of skin. Of course, this kind of roasting flesh and blood with poisonous flames could only be done to the enemy. Perhaps there would not be many opportunities to use it, but once it was used, the effect would definitely be unexpected and pleasantly surprising. This could almost be regarded as a backup method to deal with special situations. It was definitely the best method, without any suspense. And this was only a part of the power of the Shenong six-colored flame. There were obviously many others. The Shenong strange flame had a total of 9 colors. 1 to 3 colors were the early strange flame. 4 to 6 colors were the middle strange flame. 7 to 9 colors were the late strange flame. The current Shenong flame had already reached the peak of the middle strange flame, and it would enter the late strange flame after another evolution. Its significance was absolutely great, and there were definitely many practical benefits. However, Yi Xian did not have the time to carefully explore them one by one. There was still a flying centipede in front of him that seemed to have water in its head. It was waiting for him to take care of it. After a short period of excitement, Yi Xian quickly adjusted his state of mind again, and then turned to look at the flying centipede that was flying in circles in front of him. Today was different from the past. Although less than an hour had passed, both Yi Xian himself and the Shenong cauldron under his feet had quietly completed a breakthrough and evolution. Meanwhile, the flying centipede, who harbored malicious intentions in front of him, was rapidly depleting his energy. Even though he wasn't attacked, the large amount of poisonous mist accumulated in the countless poison sacs in his body had already been released in a short period of time. There wasn't much left, and this was also a form of depletion. Furthermore, it was a short-term and intense consumption. Under this increase and decrease, the disparity between the two sides was unknowingly obvious. It could be said that the current Yi Xian was extremely confident in capturing the flying centipede alive. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was 90% confident in capturing the flying centipede alive. But before that, there was still a large amount of strange black fog remaining in the surrounding void, but it had to be absorbed first. This kind of poisonous fog was rare, and there wouldn't be such a shop after this village. Yi Xian decided to use the Shenong cauldron to absorb it with all its might, condense it into liquid, and preserve it for future emergencies. A need. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian immediately activated the domain power of the Shenong cauldron with all his might. He no longer held back and unleashed an extremely fast speed, completely releasing it, and began to absorb the remaining strange poisonous fog in the surrounding void. Hiss! At this moment, a powerful suction force suddenly appeared from the mouth of the Shenong cauldron. The remaining strange poisonous fog in the surrounding void suddenly hissed loudly, and in an instant, it was as if it was sucked in by a powerful tornado, moving towards the mouth of the Shenong cauldron at an extremely fast speed. They gathered together. In just half a moment, a terrifying vortex formed from strange poisonous fog with a diameter of 10,000 feet appeared above the mouth of the cauldron. The flying centipede in the void in front of him just happened to turn its head at this moment. When it saw this strange scene, its mind was in a mess again. It was dumbstruck as if it had just been struck by lightning. Is this brat crazy? Do you think you're not dying fast enough? You're actually swallowing the sea like a whale? As soon as he finished speaking, there was no longer a trace of strange poisonous fog in the vast void within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. In just a short breath, all of the strange poisonous fog was sucked into the Shenong cauldron. If it was before the Shenong 6 colors had completed its evolution, this scene would definitely not have happened. Even if Yi Xian ignored the flying centipede in front of him and activated the Shenong cauldron to absorb with all its might, it would have taken at least 5 to 6 breaths. But now, the speed had increased by several times. From this, it could be seen that after the Shenong strange flame had evolved into a 6-colored flame, the power of the Shenong cauldron's internal domain had increased by an astonishing amount. What was even more astonishing was the speed at which it was condensed. Almost in the instant that the strange poisonous fog was completely absorbed, 18 drops of dark green liquid appeared in the central region of the Shenong cauldron. Each drop was only the size of a finger, but it gave off a sinister feeling that made one's heart palpitate. This was condensed from the huge amount of strange poisonous fog that it had just absorbed, and was named by Yi Xian as the sky centipede poison. Swish! With a thought, 18 small jade storage bottles were taken out by Yi Xian from his undying world. Each bottle contained a drop of the sky centipede poison. Following that, these 18 small jade storage bottles, which represented terrifying poison, were directly stored by Yi Xian into his undying world. After completing all this, Yi Xian heaved a long sigh of relief. He lifted his head to look at the flying centipede in front of him and grinned. Who would have thought that chasing after a desperate foe would result in such a huge gain? Not only did I achieve a breakthrough in my body tempering, even the treasured cauldron's strange flame has evolved, and I even obtained 10 drops out of thin air. 8 drops of sky centipede poison. This is really... Thank you. Puh. This is impossible, little bastard. You're lying, you. You must be about to be poisoned. This is the final radiance of the setting sun. Before Yi Xian could finish his words, the flying centipede in front of him opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of dark green poisonous blood. The old man vaguely realized what had happened, but he was not willing to accept it, nor did he dare to believe it. However, in his subconscious, there was a voice telling him that everything was real, that every word the other party said was true, and that there was not the slightest bit of falsehood. Because this was the only way to explain everything that had happened before and now. Compared to his previous analysis, this was even more perfect. It was just that it was extremely unreliable, and he did not dare to believe it. Because of this, after spitting out the blood, the flying centipede's voice was filled with grief and indignation. A dignified, undying old monster like him had reached the point where his mind was about to collapse from the reality before his eyes. Chapter 3994. Pooh! You goddamn evildoer. As soon as Yi Xian's words fell, the flying centipede in front of him spat out another mouthful of blood, and the grief and indignation on his face became even stronger. Playing with poison? There were plenty of people who played with poison. How could this be possible? The flying centipede was one of the 9 heavenly centipedes whose bloodline had evolved to the pinnacle of this species, and the poison mist that he spat out could even corrode the void of the universe. How could it be ignored by a random person who played with poison? This was definitely a monster. However, when he thought of the fact that this person was originally one of the 4 great monsters, and was known as the #1 person among the younger generation, the flying centipede was immediately stunned. Forget it, today's matter was over, and there was no way to continue. The other party, a junior of the domain lord level, actually had the time to temper himself and his magic treasures while chasing after the immortal old monsters, to make breakthroughs and improve. This was simply King Dog, and if he continued to stay, he probably wouldn't even know how he died. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, the flying centipede immediately had the intention to escape, and without hesitation, he turned around and shot off into the distance. Moreover, when he thought of the fact that the other party's cultivation strength had broken through again, and had even advanced by 2 small levels in a row, he immediately panicked and subconsciously urged the power in his body with all his strength. Plop! In the next moment, the flying centipede felt his body tremble, and he almost fell down in the void. Previously, he had used up 80 to 90% of the poison mist stored in all the poison sacs in his body, and now that he had used up so much of it, his legs were a little weak. This was really a case of trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing a handful of rice. At this moment, the flying centipede's intestines were about to turn green with regret, because under this situation, it would be even more difficult for him to successfully escape the pursuit of the other party. In fact, this was indeed the case. The moment the flying centipede's body staggered in the void, Xianxia's obviously mocking voice came from behind. "Yo, old man, are your legs weak? Did you shoot too much?" PFFF. The flying centipede was on the verge of spitting blood again. He was a dignified Eternal Realm expert, yet he'd been ridiculed and ridiculed by an ant at the Region Lord Realm. This matter was truly too aggrieving. The crux of the matter was that this fellow had just obtained benefits from him, and this fellow was clearly acting like he'd been taken advantage of. That little bastard was really too hateful. The flying centipede's face was filled with tears, but there was nothing he could do. He could only grit his teeth and spit out all the resentment and humiliation. No matter what, he had to get through this calamity first. Where there was life, there was hope. In the future, there would be plenty of opportunities for revenge. On the other hand, if he were to fall here, then there would be no need to say anything. When he thought up to here, his heart trembled as he realized how severe the situation before him was. He didn't have the mood to reflect on it any longer, and he tossed everything to the back of his mind before gritting his teeth and exerting all his strength to dash swiftly towards the space ahead. Facing this scene, Xian wasn't in a hurry at all. Earlier, his cultivation was merely at the First Order Region Lord Realm, and the Farmer God Cauldron's might hadn't been improved yet. So once he utilized it at full strength, his speed had already surpassed the flying centipede. Now, his strength had broken through once more from the First Order Region Lord Realm to the Third Order Region Lord Realm. Even the might of the Farmer God Cauldron had improved by quite a bit due to the 5 colored flames evolving into 6 colored flames. However, it just so happened that the Eternal Realm expert in front of him had shot too much in battle, and his legs were already weak. Under such circumstances, if Xian utilized the Farmer God Cauldron with all his might, then his speed was already capable of crushing the flying centipede. "Old fellow, you won't be able to escape. Don't be afraid. This king has taken a liking to you, and I'll absolutely not kill you. I just want to capture you alive." Even though the Farmer God Cauldron's 6 colored flames had been completed, and he probably didn't need the poisonous mist secreted by the flying centipede, such a thing was rare, and its effects in body tempering were much better than the hellish ant elixir. Moreover, this flying centipede before him was an existence whose bloodline had evolved to the peak of its species. It was difficult to find a second flying centipede in this world, so he naturally couldn't bear to directly kill it. He had long since decided that after capturing it alive, he would raise it in the Farmer God Cauldron, and extract the poisonous mist for a long time to condense into liquid and preserve it for a rainy day. With this thought in mind, Xian activated the Farmer God Cauldron with all his might, transforming into a ray of light that was at least 30% faster than the flying centipede, and whistling through the air. The distance between the two wasn't too far in the first place, and the current Farmer God Cauldron's speed was far greater than before. In a short span of a dozen breaths, it had already rushed to the space 1,000,000 kilometers behind the flying centipede. The latter quickly glanced back and was so frightened that his soul almost left his body. If this continued, in a few more breaths of time, the Farmer God Cauldron would press down on his back. At that time, there would definitely be no way out, and he would probably really be captured alive. Huff! Just as the flying centipede was anxious and considering whether to take the risk and directly tear through the void and escape, a gust of wind suddenly whistled behind him, and it seemed to be getting closer and closer. He subconsciously turned around to look, and the scene that entered his eyes caused him to tremble on the spot. A sea of fire. A huge sea of flames was roaring and rolling as it whizzed over. Clearly, It had just shot out from the giant star cauldron that was chasing after them. The flying centipede was originally not afraid of a normal sea of fire, but the majestic sea of fire that was rapidly enveloping him was obviously different. Each cluster of flames had 6 colors, which was extremely strange. There was no doubt that its power was absolutely terrifying. Because among the 6 colors, one was black, which was clearly a poisonous flame. Vaguely, the flying centipede seemed to sense a slightly familiar aura from this black poisonous flame. It was the aura of the poisonous mist that was secreted from his body. Obviously, this 6-colored flame had just devoured the poisonous mist secreted by his body, which was why it had evolved and transformed. It could even devour and refine the poisonous mist that he was so proud of and increase its ferocious power. Was there any need to say more about the power of this mysterious 6-colored flame? Huff! The speed of this sea of fire was so fast that it made one's hair stand on end. After all, it was shot out by the Shenong cauldron with all its power. In just a short breath, it had already blocked the flying centipede's path, and then it split into 2, surrounding him from left and right. The flying centipede's face suddenly changed, and his body trembled as he hurriedly stopped. When he turned his head to look around, his heart had already sunk to the bottom. In such a short time, the front and left sides were already filled with this strange wave of flames, and behind him, a huge cauldron like a star was whistling over. From the mouth of the cauldron, it was still spewing out 6-colored strange flames that made one's scalp numb. In the blink of an eye, his body was already surrounded by rolling waves of flames. He was wrapped tightly like a dumpling. Seeing this scene, the flying centipede was completely desperate. He raised his head and let out a violent howl, full of unwillingness and sorrow. Chapter 3995. Screech! God-damned monstrous bastard, I was actually captured alive by a domain lord ant. In the blink of an eye, the flying centipede was engulfed in a sea of flames. The flying centipede's body was surrounded by rolling 6-colored strange flames, and its aura was astonishing. This scene caused the flying centipede to fall into complete despair. It raised its head and let out a vicious howl, full of unwillingness and incomparable mournfulness. At this moment, Xianxia had also stopped. The Shenong cauldron beneath his feet, which was as enormous as a star, floated at the edge of the spherical sea of fire. It coldly stared at the flying centipede that was tightly wrapped by the 6-colored sea of fire, leaving only a pitiful amount of space for it to rest in. He let out a light breath and continued, "Old man, don't worry. As long as you perform well and contribute more poison, I guarantee that I won't mistreat you." "What? You actually want to raise me like a cow and extract poison for a long time?" Hearing Xianxia's words, the flying centipede was so angry that his entire body trembled. A dignified, undying old monster actually burst out with vulgarities on the spot. F***CKU. Noisy. Xianxia's expression darkened. He waved his hand and the sea of fire in front of him instantly moved. It wrapped around the flying centipede and quickly surged toward the mouth of the farmer god cauldron. In the blink of an eye, it entered the space within the cauldron and fell toward the central region volcano. Rumble. At the same time, at the bottom of the central region volcano in the cauldron, a loud rumbling sound came from one side of the mountain wall. With Xianxia's thought, a huge mountain wall cage appeared. It was at least 10,000 feet wide and was just enough to hold the flying centipede's true body. Soon, the boundless sea of fire that surged into the mountain wall cage seemed to have grown eyes and directly entered the mountain wall cage. Then, it passed through the mountain wall and entered the boiling flame pool at the center of the plain at the bottom of the volcano. The flying centipede, who was originally enveloped by the sea of fire, was left alone in the cage that was tailor-made for him. No matter how he roared and slammed into the cage, he could not break through it. He could not move it at all. Roar! Roar! God-damned monstrous bastard! Let me out! In the blink of an eye, he became a prisoner. As an undying old monster, the flying centipede was indescribably sad and indignant. He couldn't calm his emotions and kept roaring and rolling in the mountain wall cage. During this process, some strange black poison mist subconsciously spread out from his body and floated out. Unknowingly, it floated into another cage not far away. Was imprisoned in this mountain wall cage, and had become Xianxia's servant. Shi Wanjin. However, Shi Wanjin had always been in a coma. Although his injuries had already healed, his cultivation was only a little bit stronger than an ordinary member of the Berserk lion tribe. Last time, For Shi Wanjin, who had a bloodline deficit, he had unintentionally inhaled the Thunder Lock spirit mist in his body. This was equivalent to of. Since then, although he was still lying unconscious in the prison of the mountain wall at the bottom of the volcano in the central region, and the cultivation aura in his body was still very weak, there were several purple-gold lightning crackling on the surface of his body from time to time. It was the same until now. Shi Wanjin, who had lost the Tao foundation of heaven and earth, was like a piece of white paper. His bloodline, which was extremely deficient, happened to be transforming toward a certain thunder attribute bloodline and physique because of the thunder lightning spiritual mist he absorbed last time. But now, this bloodline transformation had not been completed yet. In the mountain wall cage where Shi Wanjin was imprisoned, wisps of strange poison mist floated in. Moreover, the bloodline in his body was transforming, and it just so happened that it needed a large amount of energy to nourish it. Therefore, almost as if it was a natural reaction of the body, a weak suction force suddenly appeared in the unconscious Shi Wanjin's body, and quickly followed the strange poison mist that floated into the cage. The pores all over his body absorbed it. Although the amount was very weak, the process was still ongoing. That was because in the huge cage not far away, the furious flying centipede had been releasing poison all this time. One was releasing it unconsciously, while the other was absorbing it unconsciously. The amount was very weak, but it never stopped. If this continued, no one knew what would happen in the end. Before he decided to pursue the flying centipede, Xianxia had never thought that he would get such a great benefit from this pursuit. It was like a blessing. Not only had he made another breakthrough in his cultivation base, but his life level had also evolved further. Even the Shenong unusual flame in the Shenong cauldron had gained a poisonous flame attribute as a result, successfully evolving into a 6-colored flame. In the end, he got 18 drops of Sky Centipede's poison and a living Sky Centipede of 9 bases in the immortal realm. It was a big gain. Xianxia breathed a sigh of relief to calm his agitated mind. He quickly activated the Shenong cauldron, turned around, and rushed towards the Demon Emperor star area. After a while, he arrived at the edge of the inner defense circle of the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor. At this time, outside the inner defense circle of the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor, there was still a void with a radius of 10,000 miles, enveloped by a violent and terrifying purple-gold sea of lightning. At the top of the sea of lightning, there was a blue-gold innate thunder source treasure hanging. It was Yixian's Rai-D seal. And in the center of the sea of lightning, there was a 10,000-foot-long colorful flame thunder sparrow. If it were not for Yixian's special instructions, this immortal realm colorful flame thunder sparrow would have been blown to ashes. The reason for this was that Yixian had taken a fancy to this colorful flame thunder sparrow's lightning attribute bloodline. He felt that it might be useful for the recovery of the desolate Electra, so he decided to capture it alive. However, the desolate Electra had not yet awakened, so Yixian did not know what to do with this colorful flame thunder sparrow. Although he could activate the Rai-D seal's domain to directly refine it, erase its consciousness, and extract a strand of lightning attribute bloodline from its body, but would that really work for the desolate Electra? Yixian was not sure if it would work. After pondering for a while, he decided to put this colorful flame thunder sparrow into the Shenong cauldron, like the flying centipede, and lock it in the mountain wall cage of the central region volcano in the cauldron. He would decide what to do with it after the desolate Electra woke up. After making the decision, Yixian was about to take action immediately. It was also at this moment that an unexpected change suddenly occurred. In his mind, a familiar system prompt suddenly sounded at this moment. Ding! Congratulations to the host. A lightning attribute creature has been discovered. Do you want to immediately refine it into a thunder slave? Thunder slave? What the hell is this? After being stunned for a while, Yixian immediately launched a data search in the system's database. Soon he had a result. After checking it, he immediately understood. Chapter 3996. Yixian had previously obtained a strand of thunder origin from the Thunder Tomb. The so-called Thunder Origin was a strand of Thunder Origin that was nurtured by the Thunder Lock spiritual mist in the innate Thunder Sea. The Thunder Lock spiritual mist was the mother nest of this strand of Thunder Origin. The strand of Thunder Origin that Yixian had captured not long ago had yet to develop sentience. It was merely a thunderworm without sentience. However, if it was allowed to grow as time passed, it would eventually develop sentience. When that time came, it would become the thunder spirit of this vast Thunder Sea. And the Thunder Sea that had developed a thunder spirit could be controlled at will. When it was large, it was vast and boundless, spreading out endlessly into the starry sky. When it was small, it could even condense into a thunderball, crossing the void and shooting out into the endless sea of stars. To put it bluntly, it was actually the thunder sea that had developed sentience. The desolate thunder sparrow that Xian had learned from the system database was a mature thunder spirit formed from a thunder sea that had developed sentience. If the strand of thunder origin that Xian had captured earlier could continue to grow, it could eventually lead the thunder sea to develop sentience. It could become a thunder sparrow, a thunder dragon, or some other form. In short, its forms were different, but its essence was the same. It was formed from a thunder sea that had developed sentience. A sentient being. Although there was only a strand of the desolate thunder sparrow's bloodline left in this thunder sparrow's body, which did not have the qualifications to become a thunder spirit, it could be refined into a thunder slave. A thunder soul was different from a thunder slave. A thunder soul was formed from a thunder sea that had developed sentience. It could be said that the thunder soul was the thunder sea, and it was the master of the thunder sea. It was also the thunder sea itself. A thunder slave was different. A thunder slave was a slave, and could command a thunder sea. However, it was only a commander, and not the master of the thunder sea. Above that, it had to take orders from others. The significance of the thunder slave lay in the fact that it was a sea of lightning. With the thunder slave, the power of the sea of lightning would be more comprehensive and thorough. Take the Rai-D seal for example. Although Xian had already refined it, he was not of the thunder attribute, nor was he a thunder spirit. He could activate the Rai-D seal to release a sea of thunder to defend against the enemy, but there would always be some awkwardness, as if there was a layer of barrier, unable to fully activate the power of the Rai-D seal to the extreme. However, if he refined this rainbow flame lightning sparrow and made it his lightning slave, he would be able to enter the Rai-D seal. In that case, when Xian used the Rai-D seal again in the future, he didn't need to pay too much attention to the Rai-D seal. He only needed to give orders to Lei Nu directly. With Lei Nu around, the power of the Rai-D seal could be unleashed even more thoroughly without any hindrance. After he figured out all of this, Xian immediately decided to refine the rainbow flame lightning sparrow and make it the lightning slave of the Rai-D seal. The order was quickly given, and there was utterly no need for Xian to interfere in its execution, because the Rai-D seal was able to accomplish all of this on its own. Rumble. Bang! After it received Xian's order, the sea of violet gold lightning that covered an area of 5,000 kilometers instantly surged with lightning, and its impetus grew even more shocking. This was the sign that the Rai-D seal was about to condense and refine the rainbow flame lightning sparrow into a lightning slave of the Rai-D seal. The rainbow flame lightning sparrow that was trapped within the sea of lightning sensed this and realized that calamity was about to befall it. It immediately let out sharp cries and vicious howls, and it even started to beg for mercy from Xian for the sake of being spared its life. Roar! Young brother, please show mercy. I'm willing to submit. A dignified Eternal Realm expert had actually been forced to speak such words of submission to an ant at the Region Lord Realm. Needless to say, this was truly too aggrieving. However, the rainbow flame lightning sparrow didn't have any other choice. Even though it was trapped within the sea of lightning, it could sense everything that was occurring in the outside world. Besides the blood-crested fox-dove that had perished beneath the violet gold tide of time, the sable fiend tiger and soaring centipede that came after it had been blasted to death and captured alive. 4 Eternal Realm experts had descended, so only it remained in a short period of less than 2 hours of time. Under such circumstances, how could it possibly hold on to its so-called dignity as an Eternal Realm expert? Unfortunately, even if it put down its status and dignity and personally begged for mercy from Xian for the sake of being spared, the latter didn't appreciate it at all. The Rai-D seal's refinement had already begun, and Xian didn't intend to stop just like that. It was even to the extent that he didn't give a single reply. He just stood there in space at the side of the Sea of Lightning and watched coldly as all of this occurred. The rainbow flame lightning sparrow felt complete despair, and its vicious howls grew even more miserable. In the end, it even cursed without end. However, Xian still remained unmoved. In a short period of over 10 breaths of time, the dust had settled. The rainbow flame lightning sparrow's aura had vanished completely. However, Xian sensed that there was an aura that was extremely close to him within the vast sea of lightning ahead. It was very pure and very strong. It had actually attained the advanced stage of the Eternal Realm, and it was much stronger than the rainbow flame lightning sparrow from before. This was clearly the effect of being tempered by the Rai-D seal. This strand of consciousness was formed from the strand of the primeval lightning sparrow's bloodline within the rainbow flame lightning sparrow's body. Now, it was the lightning slave of the Rai seal. As for the rainbow flame lightning sparrow, it had been obliterated a long time ago while its 30 kilometers body had been completely refined, and it had become the lightning slave formed from this strand of lightning sparrow's bloodline. Screech! A high-pitched vicious howl resounded through the clouds. Following that, a figure rushed out from the sea of lightning ahead. It was only about a foot in size and looked like an ordinary bird. However, its entire body was purple gold in color. There was spirituality in its eyes, and there was even lightning flickering in and out of its eyes. From time to time, there would be purple gold lightning flashing in and out of its eyes. This was the lightning soul of the Emperor's seal, and it was still in the form of a lightning sparrow. As the figure rushed out, the purple gold lightning sparrow suddenly lowered its head and opened its small beak. In the next moment, the sea of purple gold lightning below it turned into a huge river of lightning that soared into the sky. In less than half a breath's time, the purple gold lightning had been devoured by the sea of purple gold lightning. The sparrow had swallowed everything into its stomach. A large sea of lightning fell into its stomach, causing the foot-sized purple gold lightning sparrow to burp. Then, it turned its head to look in Xianxia's direction. With a light cry of joy, it flapped its wings and flew over, like a swallow throwing itself into its arms. At this moment, Xianxia was really nervous. After all, even though this purple gold lightning sparrow had an inconspicuous appearance, the might it could unleash was extremely terrifying. The sea of lightning that it had just swallowed was proof of this. Moreover, its cultivation had already reached the late stage of the sempiternal stage, and it was not far from the peak. If it really wanted to attack Xianxia after getting close, Xianxia would definitely be in trouble. However, this was after all the lightning slave of the Rai seal that he had refined. In a sense, it was actually his servant. Chapter 3997. In the end, it was just a false alarm. Although this purple gold thunder sparrow was refined from the primordial thunder sparrow bloodline extracted from the iridescent flame thunder sparrow, the iridescent flame thunder sparrow's consciousness had long been erased along with its true body. Now, the purple gold thunder sparrow's intelligence was bestowed by the Rai seal. It was a completely new life, and had nothing to do with the iridescent flame thunder sparrow. Naturally, it would not hate Xianxia anymore. On the contrary, its life and intelligence were bestowed by the Rai seal, and the Rai seal had long been refined by Xianxia. Its essence was branded with Xianxia's aura. Therefore, in the eyes of this purple gold thunder sparrow, Xianxia was actually its master, and the Rai seal was its nest. Under such circumstances, how could it attack Xianxia? At this moment, after a sparrow landed on Xianxia's shoulder, the purple gold thunder sparrow happily circled him a few times, chirping softly from time to time, revealing a sense of dependence. At this point, Xianxia was completely relieved. Originally, he was really interested in playing with this cute little lightning sparrow, but now there were other things to do. Therefore, Xianxia directly waved his hand to summon the Rai seal, and mentally signaled for the little lightning sparrow to return to its nest. The little lightning sparrow reluctantly circled Xianxia's figure again, and finally turned into a wisp of purple gold light, and rushed into the imperial seal. Xiao! With a wave of his hand, Xianxia put away the Rai seal, and then turned to look in the direction of the 3 stars demonic emperor. As early as when Xianxia drove the Shenong cauldron to chase the flying centipede, the starry sky defensive array of the 3 stars demonic emperor had been removed. A large number of warships rushed out of the 3 stars demonic emperor's defensive array after the defensive light shield disappeared, and rushed to the battlefield to encircle and annihilate the escaping fleet of 1 million elite warships. Fish. At this moment, Xianxia turned his head to look at the 3 devil emperor stars for the same reason. The 3 sector lord old monsters had already escaped, but they were definitely not far away. The upper echelons of the demon kin royal family would not allow them to leave. Most likely, the ancestor of the Demonkin race had already used his methods to seal the entire Demonkin starfield, preventing them from tearing through space and leaving. As a marquis, even if he didn't show himself, he could still do this. Although his opponent had not shown himself, Xianxia believed that he had been paying close attention to the situation on the battlefield. Previously, he had only shown himself to be able to kill these 4 immortal realm old monsters one by one. Otherwise, he would have shown himself long ago. But even if he didn't show himself, he couldn't let the 3 sector lord old monsters escape, because if that happened, the news of this battle would definitely be leaked. It should be known that the powerhouses of the two camps of the various races in the second universe and the human race in the third universe, as well as the Senate of the Myriad Luo Federation, had not yet arrived. If they were shocked to hear that the Myriad Race Alliance of the first universe had lost 4 immortal old monsters in the Demon Emperor starfield in just one day, they would probably be frightened on the spot. He had to retreat. The next time they came, there would probably be Marquis or even Emperor-level immortals. Therefore, these 3 undyings of the Myriad Races Alliance had to be left behind. As for the other small fries, they could be left to the fleets and experts of the Devil Race to take care of. What Yixian needed to do now was to kill these 3 realm masters. After that, this battle would be considered to have come to an end. When Yixian turned around, a group of upper echelons of the demon royal family had already rushed over. The one leading was the current demon emperor, Mo Wention. At this moment, Mo Wention's face was filled with fear. He looked at Yixian with a strange expression, as if he had been scared out of his wits. When their gazes met, Mo Wention didn't hesitate at all. He cupped his hands and said, "The positions of those 3 sector lords have been locked. The current demon emperor has already gone after one of them. The other 2 haven't separated yet. Their positions are right here." As he said this, a direction coordinates wrapped in spiritual energy shot towards Yixian. He waved his hand and caught it in his palm. After quietly dispersing it, Yixian already knew the positions of those 2 sector lords. They are actually still sticking together. Could it be that they still want to gather their strength so that they can forcefully counterattack when they are intercepted? While muttering to himself, Yixian revealed a cold smile. Without saying anything else, he activated the farmer god cauldron under his feet and turned around. He shot towards the edge of the demon royal starfield that led to the central region of the first universe. Black Wind Starfield. Black Wind Starfield was one of the 9 starfields of the demon royal starfield. It was a place that one had to pass through to reach the central region of the first universe. This originally belonged to the Black Wind tribe, one of the 8 foreign tribes of the demon royal family. But now that the demon royal family was in danger, the 8 foreign tribes had all gathered in the central region of the demon royal starfield. Therefore, in such a large area of the Black Wind starfield, there were almost no strong warriors stationed in the various demon royal starfields. At this time, in the void of the Black Wind starfield, there were 2 figures flying at extreme speed. Their speed was actually much faster than the huge stronghold with a diameter of 100,000 meters. These were the 2 sector lord old monsters that had escaped from the demon royal starfield. They were also Yixian's target. This place was already tens of millions of miles away from the central region of the demon royal starfield. Another 30 to 40 million miles and they would be able to leave the demon royal starfield. In the void, the 2 sector lord old monsters channeling the energy in their bodies and using extreme speed, fleeing all the way, the only thing they had in mind was the demonic devil starfield border dividing line 30 to 40 million li away. They were sector lord old monsters, but now they were like stray dogs. They were truly frightened because they had personally witnessed 3 undying old monsters being crushed by the demon royal brother, Mo Jiufeng. The blood-crowned fox dove was reduced to half a skeleton. The black demon tiger was blasted in 2. Even its primordial spirit couldn't escape. As for the rainbow lightning sparrow, it was also trapped in a 10,000-mile sea of lightning. Clearly, it wasn't looking good either. This was too shocking. The 3 sector lord old monsters who were watching the battle from afar were so scared that they immediately turned and fled. They originally wanted to tear through the void and escape, but they quickly discovered that the void was sealed by a formless mysterious energy. They couldn't do it at all. Helplessly, the 3 could only use their fleshly body to travel through the void and escape in different directions. Luckily, the demon royal brother Mo Jiufeng was chasing the last undying old monster, the flying centipede. He didn't have time to care about them. As long as they were fast enough, there was still a chance to escape this sealed demon royal starfield and tear through the void again. There was still 30 million miles before reaching the edge of the demon royal starfield. As long as they rushed out, they would see their chance. Thinking up to here, the 2 sector lord old monsters became excited. Their speed that had already reached the limit actually exploded again under such circumstances, increasing their speed by another 20%. At this time, in the direction of the demon royal starfield, something unexpected happened. Rumble. Chapter 3998. Rumble. Rumble. Rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth resounded, and it was growing closer and closer. It was the commotion caused by a treasured cauldron that was enormous, like a star shooting over at extreme speed through space. Shockingly, it was Xian who'd locked onto the position of the treasured cauldron and utilized the farmer god cauldron with all his might to rush over and kill Xian and his companions. The hearts of the two fleeing world lords froze while they had a bad premonition, and they instinctively turned around to look. When they saw this scene, they were terrified to the point their figures started trembling while their countenances instantly turned ghastly pale like a sheet of paper. After all, this person behind him was a terrifying existence that could even annihilate eternal old monsters. So, the strength he revealed at the Region Lord realm right now was simply a facade to deceive others. Besides that eternal old monster from the Senior Council of the Federation that he'd killed not too long ago, they'd witnessed this fellow crush 3 eternal old monsters just moments ago. The blood-crowned fox dove had been transformed into half a skeleton, the baleful black devil tiger had been blasted into 2, and even its soul core hadn't been able to escape. As for the rainbow flame lightning sparrow, it was similarly trapped within an ocean of lightning, and it obviously didn't bode well for it. After that, he even pursued the flying centipede with great fanfare. Based on the fact that he'd caught up to them so quickly, the flying centipede was probably dead as well. Now that they thought about it, in merely less than 2 hours of time, the eternal old monsters that had perished at his hands had already arrived at 4. If that eternal old monster from the Senior Council of the Federation was included, then it would be 5 eternal old monsters. What a monstrous genius. He's simply not human, he's simply a god of slaughter. When they thought up to here, the hearts of these 2 fleeing world lords instantly started to tremble. They'd gathered together and not fled separately because they were originally prepared to deal with their enemies as soon as possible and flee swiftly if they encountered obstructions. But that was referring to the other experts of the demonic race. Even if a sector lord chased over, with the 2 of them working together, if they were willing to risk their lives, they would have a chance to escape in a short period of time. However, the one chasing after them was this terrifying god of death. Even the immortal realm old monsters had fallen in his hands. Facing such an existence chasing after them, they simply didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Even the flying centipede couldn't escape and was still killed. With their strength, if they wanted to escape from the hands of this killing god, could they not be joking? His only hope was to make the other party stop pursuing him. If he wanted to do that, he could only beg for mercy. As for other methods, once he used them, he would definitely be courting death. He would directly enrage the other party, and they would definitely chase him to the ends of the earth. They would not rest until he was dead. More importantly, they didn't have the ability to escape that far. As these thoughts flashed through their minds, the 2 sector lord old monsters were so frightened that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. They exchanged a glance, and their pale faces turned red. They turned around and begged for mercy from this god of slaughter Jr. who was chasing after them. Little friend, calm down. What happened before was actually a misunderstanding. Please don't chase us anymore. Treat us as farts. And let us go, all right? Since you've been tormenting us for so long, you must be tired. We don't dare to trouble you anymore. We'll scram ourselves. Yes, scram immediately, don't stay a second longer. Little ancestor, why are you still chasing us? We have no enmity. Please don't chase us. After pleading a few times, the god of slaughter who was chasing after him at an extremely fast speed didn't move at all. He didn't even respond. In just a short while, the huge cauldron that was like a star under his feet had caught up a lot closer. It seemed that it was about to catch up with him. Such a scene scared the 2 old monsters out of their wits. Their words carried a sobbing tone. At this moment, they were truly regretting it to the point that their intestines turned green. If they had known earlier that the devil race's royal brother, Mo Jinfeng, was such a monster, why would they have fought to the death? They would have just brought their race to surrender. With such a monster around, the devil race was destined to be a great blessing. They were destined to be the #1 universe overlord. Unfortunately, they didn't understand this point before. It was too late to regret now. Rumble. Just as the 2 sector lord old monsters were filled with regret and hatred, the Shen cauldron that was as large as a star behind them had already caught up to them in a few breaths of time. It was already less than 100 miles away from the 2 of them who were fleeing with extreme speed. A feeling of complete despair surged into their hearts. The expressions of the 2 sector lord old monsters instantly became ferocious. After all, they were the ancestor-level figures of their respective races. Just now, They were like stray dogs begging for mercy from the god of death chasing behind them. That was because they still held on to the last glimmer of hope in their hearts. But now, it seemed that wanting to live this time had clearly become a wishful thinking. It was simply impossible to realize. Under such circumstances, there was naturally no need to lower his status and dignity to beg the other party. It was just death anyway. Since he couldn't escape, he would do his best to cause some damage to the other party. Little bastard, you forced me to do this. Since I'm going to die anyway, even if I can't drag you down with me, I'll at least disgust you a little. Go to hell. With a ferocious expression, the two Sector Lord Old Monsters revealed their ferocious expressions. As they roared, they directly revealed their respective bloodline true bodies, which were tens of thousands of feet tall. Then, they did not hesitate to self-destruct. It was not the self-destruction of the physical body, but the physical body and primordial spirit at the same time. In any case, it was useless to keep the primordial spirit. An immortal old monster as strong as the Black Fiend Devil Tiger. After the bloodline true body was blasted into two pieces, the primordial spirit escaped. Didn't it also not escape the calamity? In the end, the primordial spirit was destroyed, and its body and soul were destroyed. Rumble. After making up their minds and determined to die, the two Sector Lord Old Monsters stopped fleeing at an extremely fast speed. Their expressions were ferocious as they glared at Xianxia, who was chasing after them. Within the 100,000 feet tall bloodline true body, a deep thunderous sound came out like a tide. This was the sound of self-destruction. It had been activated, and the rhythm was about to unfold. In front of this king, do you have the qualifications to self-destruct? Seeing that these two fellows wanted to self-destruct, Xianxia immediately sneered. Without hesitation, he waved his hand and directly pulled out a sea of flames from the Shenong cauldron beneath his feet. Each flame had 6 colors, and it was incomparably dazzling. It was majestic for tens of thousands of miles, and directly enveloped the two Sector Lords' 100,000 feet tall bloodline true body. It was enveloped within. Ruthless. Chapter 3999. After this unexpected evolution, the power of the Shenong's 6-colored flames had clearly become more powerful. At this moment, the two Sector Lord Old Monsters, and they were still alive, had been completely roasted in just a dozen breaths. When Xianxia waved his hand and stored the 6-colored flames into the Shenong cauldron, there were already 2 large pieces of complete fragrant meat in the void in front of him. The bloodline of these two Sector Lord Old Monsters was the striped deer, while the other was the hedgehog beast. Their bloodline true bodies were tens of thousands of meters tall, but at this moment, after being roasted by the Shenong's 6-colored flames and refining all the impurities, the 2 lumps of meat left in the void had shrunk to only 40 to 50,000 meters. Its entire body was golden and dripping with oil, emitting a rich fragrance. Xianxia had never eaten these 2 bloodlines of space beasts before, especially the striped deer. It was said that its meat was extremely tender and was a great delicacy in space. That was referring to the striped deer that didn't have any cultivation strength or intelligence. And the one in front of him that had been roasted was a Sector Lord Realm striped deer, whose life form and bloodline had evolved to an extremely high degree. Its meat was originally even more delicious, and after being roasted by the Shenong's 6-colored flames, it was naturally extremely tempting whether it was the taste or the effect. Even Xianxia, who was used to eating the meat roasted from the remains of quasi-desolate powerful beings, couldn't help but feel his appetite and salivate at this moment. With a wave of his hand, he didn't hesitate to use the withered demon blood blade and cut off the best and most delicious pieces of meat from the striped deer and the hedgehog beast. Then, while putting away the withered demon blood blade, he sent most of the remaining meat into the Shenong cauldron. There was still a large group of foodie beasts inside. Although this time couldn't let them eat to their heart's content, it could at least appease them a little. In this battle, although the myriad race alliance formed by the servants of the First Universe had sent over 1 million elite troops, due to Xianxia's hasty return, he had no choice but to use the blood mosquito battle armor in the face of the demon guard's annihilation. After an all-out attack, 1 million battleships were basically destroyed. Nothing was left behind. The flesh and blood that the indigenous vicious beasts had hoped for had not been left behind at all. If those foodies were to find out about this, they would probably beat their chests and stomp their feet, cursing Xianxia for being a wastrel. Fortunately, there was still the second wave of the punitive expedition army coming. The humans of the Third Universe were all descendants of the dire beast bloodline. When the war broke out, there would be a huge amount of flesh and blood resources to be collected. Thinking like this, Yi Xian nodded inwardly. He had already made up his mind. After returning to the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor Star, he would release all the millions of indigenous ferocious beasts led by the primordial porcupine and the primordial turtle at the first possible moment and have them guard the Demon Emperor Star region. In this way, once the battle started, he could just hunt or collect whatever meat he wanted to eat. While muttering this matter in his heart, Yi Xian ate heartily. The 2 large pieces of flesh and blood that he had cut with the withered demon blood blade were quickly eaten clean by him. This kind of flesh that had been roasted by the Shunnong's 6-colored flame was indeed extraordinary. As soon as it entered his mouth, while leaving a fragrant taste in his mouth, it instantly turned into a warm current that rapidly circulated through Yi Xian's limbs and bones, making his entire body warm and comfortable to the extreme. With his current cultivation base and strength, it was obviously impossible to directly break through on the spot after eating this bit of flesh and blood roasted by the bloodline true body of a Sector Lord Old Monster, but after all, this was also a kind of accumulation. With the death of these 2 Sector Lord Old Monsters, this war could be considered to have completely come to an end. In terms of high-end combat strength, 2 of the 4 immortal realm old monsters that the Myriad Race Alliance had dispatched had fallen. One had been captured alive by Yi Xian, and the other had been completely annihilated. The bloodline in their bodies had been extracted and refined into an Emperor Seal Thunder Slave by the Thunder Emperor Seal. In terms of conventional battle strength, of the million elite battleships dispatched by the Myriad Race Alliance this time, not a single one was left, all of them destroyed. Although many of the stronger universe experts in the battleships had escaped, of the 3 strongest Sector Lord Old Monsters, 2 had just been dealt with by Yi Xian, and the last one was handled by the Demon Emperor Mo Wen Tian, most likely already fallen by now. As for the rest of the small fries, they could be left to the other experts of the demon race to clean up. There was no need for Yi Xian to do anything. It could be said that this time, the battle strength dispatched by the Myriad Race Alliance could be said to have been completely annihilated. Not a single one was able to escape alive. This also ensured that in a short period of time, news of this shocking slaughter in the demon race starfield would not be leaked. This was also the result that Yi Xian and the demon race wanted. If there are no surprises, the various races of the second universe, as well as the 2 camps of the human race and the Myriad Luo Federation in the third universe, should be arriving soon. At most, they will arrive at the first universe in 3 days, and within 5 days, they will arrive at the Demon Emperor 3 stars. Yi Xian's eyes flashed as he muttered to himself. In the end, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his face instantly turned gloomy. Humph, no matter what, this young master and the demon dwellers are now close friends. In this battle, this young master defeated 4 immortal realm old monsters alone, but the demon dweller's foundation ancestor has not shown up yet. Although this is normal, after all, he is an immortal realm official. Unless there is no other choice, he will definitely not make a move. Otherwise, if his aura is leaked and is sensed by the various races of the second universe, the human race and the Myriad Luo Federation in the third universe, there will be endless variables in this battle. Even though it's like that, this young master has turned the situation around by himself and dealt with the danger of the Demon Emperor 3 stars. However, the demon race practically didn't contribute at all. This is an indisputable fact. In short, no matter what, the demon race owes this young master an enormous favor. After all, this young master fought 4 immortal realm experts while at the Region Lord realm. It's rare to encounter such an opportunity where the demon race was in the wrong. Moreover, the demon emperor, Mo Tian, who had been intentionally avoiding this young master, made an appearance at the last moment. He clearly felt that he was in the wrong and intentionally showed himself in order to appease this young master. When he spoke up to this point, a bright light flashed in Yi Xian's eyes, and then a wisp of slyness suddenly appeared in his eyes as he continued muttering to himself. A bastard that refuses to take advantage of an opportunity. Seizing the opportunity when the demon emperor took the initiative to appease this young master because the demon race was in the wrong, I can seize this opportunity to ask him about the Mad Mosquito Emperor and Demon Mosquito Butcher's background and ability. Chapter 4000. After making the decision, Yi Xian immediately waved his hand and stored the Shunnong cauldron under his feet into his body. He even removed the true form of the 3-headed, 6-armed demonic ape and returned to his human form. His cultivation level also dropped to the 3rd level of the Star Lord state. After doing all this, he waved his hand and summoned the void-shattering shuttle. He took a step into it and turned around to rush towards the 3-star Devil Emperors. He had decided that he had to find out who the Mad Mosquito King and Mosquito Butcher were, and if they were related to the home planet of the demons. Yi Xian had already heard about the mother planet from the current generation's Devil Emperor, Mo Wen Tian. The bloodline ancestor of the Devil Cultivator race came from that mysterious mother planet. Back then, when the primordial war broke out, the entire great desolate world collapsed into 10,000 worlds. Because of that war, the home planet drifted to an unknown void crack. Only the bloodline primordial ancestor, who was as strong as the primordial ancestor, wandered to the first universe with a few descendants. This person was the bloodline primordial progenitor of the demon-kin race in the first universe. At that time, because he was heavily injured, this demon-kin bloodline primordial progenitor took his juniors and followers to a small independent grotto heaven to recover from his injuries. Later, one of the descendants of the bloodline primordial ancestor started a family in the first universe, which led to the birth of the demons in the first universe. The first demon emperor wasn't actually the first descendant of the primordial ancestor. He was only called the first demon emperor because he had founded the demon dynasty. In that independent small cave, there are many ancestors who are older than the first-generation demon emperor. That independent small cave can be said to be the ancestral land of the demon race in the first universe. However, the ancestral land and the real foundation of our race's bloodline is actually in that mysterious mother planet. Unfortunately, the bloodline primordial ancestor left after he recovered from his wounds, along with the descendants and followers of the primordial ancestor who had followed him to the first universe. Of course, they all left their descendants in the first universe before they left. After all, they did not belong here. Although they had the bloodline to spread their branches in this universe, in the end, they were still homesick and embarked on the path back. They entered the vast void to find a way to return to their mysterious home planet. Since then, there had been no news of them. However, even though the bloodline primordial ancestor and his descendants and followers had left, the descendant who had left the demons in the first universe had a first-generation descendant and a second-generation descendant who were still alive. Both of them were immortals. The first-generation descendant was an immortal emperor. He had been training in seclusion 10,000 years ago, trying to become an immortal emperor, but he hadn't finished yet. The second-generation descendant who was guarding the ancestral land of the demons was a marquis immortal emperor. These two undying beings were merely descendants of a descendant of the primal ancestor of the demon-kin bloodline primal ancestor. At that time, the bloodline primordial ancestor had descended to the first universe along with several descendants of the demons and followers of other races. Among the others, a few of them had left their descendants in the first universe. At that time, when Yi Xian found out about this shocking secret, he had asked the current demon emperor Mo Wen Tian about the whereabouts of the other descendants and followers of the primordial ancestor and their bloodline descendants. He had even asked if the mad mosquito emperor and the wretched mosquito butcher were the descendants of the other descendants and followers of the primordial ancestor. However, the current demon emperor Mo Wen Tian and the higher-ups of the royal demon family were all very secretive. Their expressions were very strange, and they said they didn't dare to say more. Yi Xian had no choice but to give up. Now he had finally caught the demon emperor Mo Wen Tian, who had been hiding from him, and he was obviously feeling guilty because of this battle. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't let go of such a great opportunity. After a short while, the 3 stars of the demon emperor were in sight. The void outside the inner defense circle was still in chaos. A large number of battleship wreckages were scattered in the void, and some were even burning. However, compared to the raucous scene that had just taken place, the space within the devilish Emperor 3 stars defensive perimeter had already fallen completely silent. A large number of demon battleships were shuttling back and forth silently. Countless demon experts were busy cleaning up the mess. Yi Xian didn't stop there. The void-shattering shuttle flew directly to the Demon Emperor planet. Soon, it passed through the atmosphere of the Demon Emperor planet and entered the planet. With a whoosh, the void-shattering shuttle stopped in the air above the inner city of the Demon Emperor. Yi Xian took a step forward, stepped out of the cabin, and stored the void-shattering shuttle into his body with a wave of his hand. Then, his figure swayed, and when he reappeared, he was already outside the Demon Royal Palace. At this time, the upper echelons of the Devil Cultivator royal family were in the middle of a meeting. When they saw Yi Xian arrive, they all stood up, including the first-generation Devil Emperor, Mo Tian. As expected, he had already killed the other escaping Realm Lord Old Monster and returned to the Devil Emperor planet before Yi Xian. Yi Xian stepped into the palace, but his face was deliberately gloomy, as if he was extremely unhappy. The upper echelons of the royal demon family saw his expression and looked at each other carefully. Before, they were very respectful in front of Yi Xian, And now, their attitude was even more obvious. After all, this young man in front of them had killed, suppressed, or captured 4 immortal realm-old monsters in less than 2 hours. This was definitely a peerless monster. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was unprecedented. As if they'd noticed the displeasure in Yixian's heart, the Demon Emperor, Mo Tian, and the others exchanged glances. Even though they'd stood up, none of them took the initiative to move forward. The Demon Emperor, Mo Tian, was the #1 expert in the royal demon family. Others could avoid him, but he couldn't. When he saw Yixian's expression, Mo Tian was first stunned, and then he shook his head and laughed bitterly. He walked over to Yixian, cupped his hands, and said politely, "Young brother, you've worked hard in this battle. I presume you can understand why the ancestors of my race haven't made a move. This matter." "Sorry, don't call me young brother so sweetly. This young master isn't that familiar with you, right?" "Humph. What bullshit, ally. 4 immortal realm-old monsters descended, yet this young master, a region lord, was actually asked to hold the fort by himself. Fortunately, this young master was lucky, otherwise, I would have probably been blasted to death numerous times by now. Besides that, it's really difficult to meet an ally like you. Are you trying to wash your hands off and become a superior ninja?" Chapter 4001. Don't be angry. Don't be impulsive. Hearing that Yixian was going to pack up and leave, the expression of the Demon Emperor, Mo Tian, slightly moved as he hurriedly dissuaded him. The other upper echelons of the demon-kin royal family in the palace were even more nervous. The young man in front of them was a real killing god. He had taken care of 4 immortal old monsters in just 2 hours. Such battle strength was simply too important for the demon-kin race today. They definitely couldn't let him leave just like that. However, this time, the demon race was indeed in the wrong. 4 undying old monsters from the Myriad Races Alliance had arrived, while the demon race clearly had an undying ancestor, and this second-generation ancestor was an undying marquis, so it was easy for him to deal with the 4 undying old monsters from the enemy. However, he didn't show up from the beginning. In the end, the 4 undying old monsters from the Myriad Races Alliance were all killed by this young man. And yet, he knew the secrets of the demon race. Under such circumstances, it would be impossible for him not to feel resentful. However, they were all allies. It was okay to be angry. They just had to say it out loud. Didn't he already make a request? They just had to satisfy him. It wasn't a big deal anyway. With this thought in mind, the gazes of the upper echelons of the demon royal family immediately turned towards the demon emperor, Mo Tian. As for the person involved, Yixian, it was even more so. His eyes flickered with a bright light as he stared at the face of the demon emperor, Mo Tian, from beginning to end, quietly waiting for his reply. From the looks of it, if Mo Tian was still trying to muddle his way out of this matter like the previous 2 times, Mo Tian might really turn around and leave in a huff. Faced with such a situation, Mo Tian felt immense pressure. He opened his mouth twice, but in the end, he seemed to have accepted his fate. After sighing, he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine. Since you insist on asking about this matter, then this emperor can only tell you everything I know." No. "Yes, I don't know much about this either." Yixian didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue. Back then, the bloodline ancestor of the demon race came from the mother planet. When he came to the first universe, he had a few descendants and followers from other races. Clearing his throat, the first demon king put on a serious expression and slowly said, "The demon race of the first universe is the bloodline descendants of a descendant of the bloodline primordial ancestor who lived in this world." Later, although the bloodline primordial ancestor, his descendants, and followers of other races all left the first universe and embarked on a journey to return to their mother planet, the descendants of the primordial ancestor who left behind the demon-kin bloodline in the first universe, and the second generation of the primordial ancestor's descendants, they didn't leave and have been guarding the ancestral land of the demon race all this time. The first generation descendant is an emperor-level undying. He's been in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. Once he breaks through, he'll become an emperor-level undying, invincible. His eldest son, who is the second-generation descendant, is an emperor-level undying. He's the ancestor who's guarding the demon race. Besides that, the demon race has a few descendants after the second generation. However, they're all at the universe grade. No one has broken through to the undying grade. And this is just a branch of the bloodline left by one of the descendants of the ancestor. Back then, there were several descendants of the primordial ancestor. In addition to our bloodline, there was another descendant of the primordial ancestor and a follower of the primordial ancestor. They also left their bloodline in the first universe. Those two branches are the Mad Mosquito Emperor and the Mosquito Butcher. Hearing this, Xianxia's eyes lit up and he subconsciously exclaimed, "As expected, I knew that those two old fellows had a close relationship with you demons. Now, it seems that the Mosquito Butcher should be the descendant of the other primordial ancestor. He should be a close relative of your demon cultivator race. As for the Mad Mosquito Emperor, he's a descendant of the other ancestor. Although he's not a demon, he's on the same side as you." "You're right, but not completely right." The first-generation demon emperor nodded and continued, "They are the descendants of the second primordial ancestor clan and the followers of another primordial ancestor in the first universe plane. However, they are completely different from us because Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher are descendants of the first-generation ancestor." "What? First-generation descendants?" Xian was shocked. Although he had guessed the first part correctly, he didn't dare to think about the second part. What did a first-generation descendant mean? The first-generation ancestor descendant of the demon race was already an emperor-level undying even before the isolation of tens of thousands of years. Even his eldest son, who was the second-generation ancestor descendant of the demon race, was an official-level undying. The so-called first-generation ancestor descendant referred to the first-generation bloodline of the descendants and followers of the demon race. In other words, the father of Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher Old Devil wasn't a native of the first universe, nor was he born in this universe. Instead, he came from that so-called star. They were from the mother planet. Before this, Xian thought the two old monsters were at most at the universe level because the first-generation demon emperor, Mo Tian, was only at the Sector Lord level 9 pinnacle. However, it seemed like this was far from enough. The first-generation descendant of the demon race was an emperor-level undying. The other two branches were also descendants and followers of the demon race bloodline ancestor. Even if the first-generation descendant was slightly weaker, it shouldn't be as weak as the universe level, right? It had to be at least an undying, or even an official-level undying. As such thoughts flashed through his mind, Xian clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were about to tear apart, as though they were about to spit out flames. The two old men had lied to him time and time again. It had completely infuriated him. No one liked the feeling of being played like a monkey. In the past, the two undyings and even the marquee undyings had always acted like grandsons in front of him. One pretended to be crazy, while the other pretended to be his demon slave. Now that he thought about it, Xian simply had the intention to kill. "Little friend, don't be rash. It's not what you think, there's a misunderstanding." As for what Xian was thinking, even though the first-generation demon emperor Mo Tian was well aware of it, seeing how he was instantly enraged, his eyes about to solidify, he quickly stepped forward to calm him down and mediate. He continued, "Although the Mad Mosquito Monarch and the Mosquito Butcher are indeed the first-generation bloodline left behind by the two bloodlines in the first universe, which is the first generation of ancestral descendants, in a sense, they can't be considered as the first generation of ancestral descendants, so their cultivation is not as strong as you think because..." Chapter 4002. What? A doppelganger? Xian was stunned on the spot. This plot was truly melodramatic. If that was the case, then it was understandable. Since it was a clone, then it was naturally impossible for its cultivation to be as strong as its original body. However, that was not right. The original bodies of these two fellows were the first-generation descendants of the other two bloodlines. Even if they were not emperors, they had to be official undyings. The doppelganger of such beings should at least be normal undyings. Thinking about this, Xian's expression turned gloomy again. He turned to the first-generation demon emperor, Mo Tian, and sneered, "Even if it's only a doppelganger, their original bodies are the first-generation descendants. So these two old monsters should at least be normal undyings. They're just trying to fool me. Besides, even if it's only a doppelganger, can't a doppelganger communicate with the original body? They're still the same person. This is still a lie. They're just trying to fool me." "No, no, no." Hearing this, the first-generation demon emperor shook his head again and explained patiently with a wry smile. As a clone of the first-generation ancestor, of course, he can't be weaker than an ordinary undying being. However, the two of them are special, so I don't think they're lying to you. Besides, normally, doppelganger and the original body do have a way to communicate with each other. However, this is a special case for Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher. They really can't communicate with their original bodies. They don't even know who their original bodies are or where they are. Because both of them have lost their memories. Plop. Lost their memories. As soon as the first-generation demon emperor finished, Xianxia felt dizzy and almost fell to the ground. When he found out that the two old fellows were only the doppelganger of the first-generation ancestor, he already felt that the plot was ridiculous. Who would have thought that the most ridiculous part was yet to come? Such powerful beings could actually lose their memories, and both of them at the same time. This was more like a made-up story than a made-up story. No matter how he listened to it, it did not sound right. To be precise, it's a seal. The first-generation demon emperor shook his head and smiled bitterly. Including their power and memories, they've all been sealed by their original bodies. And there's more than one seal, which will be undone gradually. Perhaps a few layers have been undone, but it's definitely not all. As a result, both the Mad Mosquito Emperor and the Mosquito Butcher only know a little about their origins. The cultivation and strength they display did not match the level of a descendant of the first generation should possess. This is really fun. Why would I put layers of seals on my doppelganger for no reason? It's like wrapping a dumpling. What the hell is this? Hearing this, Xianxia completely understood. The expression on his face also became strange. He shook his head and bitterly smiled. I really don't know what kind of mystery is behind this. These ancestors really know how to play. The first-generation demon emperor sighed again. Hence, there's no way to investigate this matter. Let alone us outsiders, even the Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher don't know. It's really... Sigh, I'm speechless. Xianxia did not say anything else. His dissatisfaction and resentment towards the Mad Mosquito Emperor and Mosquito Butcher had mostly dissipated. In terms of resentment, these two old fellows were probably even more resentful than him. His cultivation and memories had been sealed by his original body for no reason, and he had been living in a muddle-headed state all this while. Anyone would have a bone to pick with this. If these two old fellows saw his original body in the future, they would probably rush up to him and strangle his neck out of resentment. Thinking of that scene, Xianxia could not help but shudder. The doppelganger and the original body fighting upon meeting. Such a scene was too beautiful. He did not dare to continue imagining it. The matter came to an end, and Xianxia did not mention the Mad Mosquito Emperor and the wretched Mosquito Butcher again. Both sides did not mention the dissatisfaction they had with the demon race. Everyone sat down one after another, and the topic returned to the main topic, which was the current situation of the demon race. Before this, the myriad Luo Federation Senate had already lost an immortal old monster in the demon race, so this time, at least 2 immortal old monsters will be mobilized. After pondering for a while, the first-generation demon emperor, Wuxia, had a solemn expression. He continued, in addition, the 2 large camps of the Third Universe's human race should each send 2 immortal old monsters. That makes 6 immortal old monsters. In addition, the allied forces of the Second Universe's various races will send at least 4 immortal old monsters. Otherwise, their strength would be far weaker than the Third Universe's human race and the myriad Luo Federation. They are now in a hostile relationship, no longer allies. On the surface, they came to the First Universe to suppress the demon race, but in reality, they each have their own thoughts. They came with the intention of dividing the benefits of the First Universe's plane. Moreover, ever since the last unforeseen event, the source of all evil starfield has been rather quiet. The Eye of the Heavens will definitely not give up on the Void Refinement Array. There will definitely be other things that will happen in the future. For the Third Universe's human race, the myriad Luo Federation, and the Second Universe's various races, they will definitely not let go of the good fortune of the source of all evil starfield. However, because of the last 2 unforeseen events, they have lost too much strength, so they do not dare to rashly advance again. And if they can get a piece of the cake in the First Universe and occupy a starfield, they can station an army here for a long time and closely monitor the source of all evil starfield. At this point, the first-generation demon emperor, Wuxia, paused for a moment and turned to look at the gloomy upper echelons of the demon race. After a short while, he said in a heavy tone, 10 immortal old monsters have arrived at the same time. This time, our demon race will have to undergo the most severe test. And there is not much time left for us to prepare. At the latest, in 3 days, the forces from outside the plane will arrive in the first universe, and in 5 days, they will arrive at the Demon Emperor starfield. Those 10 immortal old monsters will be dealt with by our demon race's great ancestor. If Linghu's strength is not damaged, he can be a support. As for beings below the immortal old monster level, our ancestral land will send a corresponding great ancestor to deal with them. The same goes for those at the sector lord level and domain lord level. As for those below the domain lord level, there is no corresponding force in the ancestral land to deal with them, so they will still need to be dealt with by everyone present. Chapter 4003. The First Universe, the Edge of the Demon's Star Field. Here, separated by tens of millions of miles in the void, there were 2 giant planar-level wormholes. One end of the 2 wormholes was at the edge of the Demon's Star Field in the First Universe, but the other end was in the Second Universe and the Third Universe respectively. These 2 wormholes were the planar-level passageways between the 3 universes. If the races of the Second Universe and the human race of the Third Universe wanted to conquer the First Universe, their battleship armies would be sent through these 2 planar-level wormholes. At this time, near these 2 planar-level wormholes, there were a large number of battleship armies gathered. One belonged to the 2 camps of the human race of the Third Universe, and the Sinlon fleet of the headquarters of the Wanluo Federation. On the other side of the wormhole, there was a punitive army from the various races of the Second Universe gathered. It had been nearly 3 days since the first battleship had rushed out of the wormhole. The armies outside the 2 planar wormholes had basically finished gathering. They were just waiting for an order, and they would approach the demon domain from 2 different directions at the same time, until they reached the demon domain. Demon Emperor 3 stars. Although everyone knew that the outcome of this war was determined by the high-end battle strength of the immortal rank, but whether it was the races of the Second Universe, the human race of the Third Universe, or the Wanluo Federation. In addition to secretly dispatching the immortal rank old monsters to participate in the war, in terms of the conventional battle strength, which was the battleship army that had been gathered to the end, they still spared no effort. The high-end battle strength of the immortal rank only determined the final outcome of this war. But annihilating the demon race was not their ultimate goal. Whether it was the races of the Second Universe, the 2 camps of the human race of the Third Universe, or the Wanluo Federation, the ultimate goal was to divide the benefits of the entire First Universe by annihilating the demon race. After the war, the undying old monsters of the various great powers would not be able to do it personally. They would only make a general agreement with each other. After that, the specific process of the distribution of benefits would still fall to the conventional battle forces below to fight for it. Therefore, the scale of the battleship army brought by the major forces and races was extremely shocking. These battleship armies would play the role of fighting for territories and mountains after annihilating the demon race. If there were too few people, the benefits would naturally be too little. Everyone understood this logic. Because of this, the battleship armies dispatched by the races of the Second Universe and the human race of the Third Universe, as well as the Wanluo Federation, all exceeded the scale of the previous battle for the source of all evil. Just the Wanluo Federation alone had dispatched half of the Sinlon fleet. This time, after arriving at the First Universe plane through the universe wormhole, the total number of battleships that had been assembled had reached as many as 5 million. Overseeing this blue fleet was a Universe 9th Stage senior statesman of the Senate. This person's name was Saga, and he was not a human. He was a powerhouse from a small race in the Second Universe. Nearly 10,000 years ago, he had been ostracized and represented his race to enter the headquarters of the Myriad Net Federation. Now, he had grown to such a high level. The elders of the Myriad Luo Federation's Senate were divided into many levels. The lowest level was the Region Lord Elder, while the next level was the Realm Lord Elder and the Universe Lord Elder. As for the Immortal Elders, they were the core of power. As a Universe 9 Grade Grand Elder, Saga was only one step away from entering the Immortal Realm. He would become an Immortal Elder of the Myriad Luo Federation's Senate and enter the core of power. This time, he had been appointed as the Commander-in-Chief of the regular fleet. From this, it could be seen that the Myriad Luo Federation was quite ambitious this time. They were prepared to do something big in the First Universe and seize a large territory as their Federation territory. Perhaps after this battle, the Myriad Luo Federation, which had not had an official star domain territory, would become a planar organization with its own ancestral land. Besides the Myriad Luo Federation, the 2 human race camps, which were also from the Third Universe plane, had gathered even more shocking conventional forces this time. Both camps of the human race had gathered tens of millions of troops. The Cultivation camp, led by the Tenju Celestial Palace and allied with other sects, had gathered a total of tens of millions of troops. More than two-thirds of them were all kinds of treasure battleships, while the remaining one-third were all kinds of battleships and fortresses of various sizes. Leading this army of tens of millions of battleships was the first palace of the Ten-Ju Celestial Palace, which was also the deputy palace master of the Heaven-Ju Celestial Palace. This person was called Gong Shouxin, and his appearance was that of a Wuxian green-robed old man. His cultivation was very strong, and he was also at the universe rank 9 Great Perfection. He was only one step away from entering the immortal realm and becoming a supreme immortal old monster. As for the human race's technology camp, they had also gathered tens of millions of battleships to form an army. Half of this army came from the immortal army of the imperial capital's immortal star, while the other half came from the 3 great empires under the imperial capital. The commander-in-chief of this imperial capital's immortal army was called Xianxia, and he was a reclusive old monster of the imperial family. His cultivation was also at the universe rank 9 Great Perfection. Just the 3rd universe plane alone had gathered an army of 25 million battleships and battleships. The commander-in-chief of the 3 armies was a half-step immortal old monster, and there were 2 ordinary immortal old monsters lurking in the dark. This was definitely a powerful force, and the lineup was too luxurious. And this was only the forces gathered outside the wormhole that connected to the 3rd universe's dimension. The troops gathered outside the wormhole connected to the 2nd universe plane were about the same as the troops gathered here. Basically, all the large tribes of the 2nd universe had organized a fleet to participate in this alliance. Among them, except for the Dark Turtle tribe, which was among the top 10 tribes, the other 9 powerful tribes had gathered a fleet of between 1 million and 2 million soldiers. Just the combined strength of these 9 powerful tribes of the 2nd universe plane was close to 20 million soldiers. In addition to the large number of fleets of other small tribes, the total strength of the entire 2nd universe plane's alliance army was even more than 25 million soldiers, reaching almost 27 million soldiers. In addition, the commander-in-chief of the alliance army of the 2nd universe plane's alliance army was a command council, which was made up of 9 old monsters of the top 10 tribes. These 9 old monsters of the 9 tribes were all at the late-stage universe plane, and more than half of them had already reached the universe rank 9 Great Perfection. In total, the enemy troops gathered outside the wormholes of these 2 planes had a total strength of more than 50 million soldiers. And this was only the so-called conventional combat strength that was revealed on the surface. Chapter 4004. The battleship army of more than 50 million soldiers was divided into 2 camps and assembled near the 2 wormholes at the edge of the Demon Star area. After 3 whole days, they were finally fully assembled. Then, with an order from the commanders, the 2 terrifying armies of more than 20 million soldiers set off almost at the same time, approaching the Demon Emperor 3 stars from the left and right of the Demon Domain from the same direction. Soon, they entered the Demon Star area. Such a terrifying army couldn't advance too fast. In fact, they didn't need to advance too fast. If they walked slowly, it would create an invisible pressure on the demon race. After all, such a terrifying army was basically enough to sweep across a universe. They couldn't resist the demon race at all. They were almost doomed to be exterminated. The pressure of facing extermination would become more and more intense as time went by and the terrifying army approached. 2 days. According to the estimation of the commanders of the 2 camps, the 2 armies would approach the 3 stars Demon Star area in 2 days in such a state of slow advance. The scouts of the demon race stationed at the edge of the star area had been informed of all this. They immediately reported all the information to the 3 stars Demon Emperor. While the terrifying armies of the 2 camps were still assembling their forces, the 3 stars Demon Emperor was ready to fight. The total force of the demon race was about 20 million battleships. Previously, Grandpa Mo had led 10 million battleships to form an allied force of 4 clans with the Hell Ant clan, the Space Mouse clan and the Giant Ferocious clan. At this moment, they were in the depths of the first universe. Therefore, there were only about 15 million battleships left in the 3 stars Demon Emperor. In these 3 days, the 2 camps from the 2nd universe and the 3rd universe were assembling their forces, and so were the demon race. Each of the 8 foreign tribes of the Demon Dweller race had 10 Demon Dweller stars. Because there were still some clansmen in these Demon Dweller stars, each Demon Dweller star had some battleships guarding it. But in these 3 days, the battleships stationed on the demon stars of the 8 tribes had all shrunk to the 3 stars Demon Emperor. However, there were only about 4 million battleships. Including this part, the total number of warships stationed in the 3 stars of the Nephilim Emperor was less than 20 million. These 20 million battleships were now lined up in a straight line in the void of the universe outside the inner defense circle of the 3 stars of the demonic emperor. The left and right sides of the battleships stretched for tens of millions of miles. Unfortunately, compared to the forces of the 2 external factions that were slowly approaching the 3-star demonic emperors, they were still inferior in comparison. They didn't even have half of the enemy's forces. However, aside from this army of close to 20 million battleships, there were also close to 6 million native ferocious beasts gathered in the Demon Emperor's 3 stars defensive perimeter. Originally, the native ferocious beasts in the depths of the root of all evil galaxy were numerous, but during the first calamity, most of them failed to escape and were buried in the netherworld cauldron under the wrath of the heavenly Tao Heavenly Eye. However, although the native ferocious beasts that had escaped with the help of Xianxia's Shenong cauldron were not many in number, only around 5 million to 6 million, but almost all of them were elites. At this moment, the close to 6 million native ferocious beasts had all revealed their bloodline true forms. Each of them was huge in size, comparable to a battleship or a fortress of various sizes. Some of the more powerful existences even had bodies of tens of thousands of feet, comparable to a fortress of various sizes. As for battle prowess, a native ferocious beast, after revealing its bloodline true form, was basically on par with a starry sky battleship. After all, although the starry sky battleships had starship cannons, the native ferocious beasts also had innate abilities and were more agile. In a battle of attrition, it was really difficult to say who would emerge victorious. In other words, the 6 million native ferocious beasts could basically be regarded as 6 million battleships of various types. Including them, the total number of the demonic race's forces barely reached 25 million. Compared to the total number of forces of the 2 external factions that were approaching, they had reached half of the enemy's forces. At this moment, the close to 6 million native ferocious beasts occupied a large corner of the demonic race's defensive perimeter. All of them revealed their bloodline true forms and bared their fangs and brandished their claws in excitement. For the demonic race, the upcoming battle was a battle for the survival of their race. For the nearly 6 million native ferocious beasts, the purpose of this battle was only to obtain food and store it. After the battle, they would slowly enjoy it when they returned to the Farmer God Cauldron. As for the survival of the demonic race, they did not care at all. These native ferocious beasts acknowledged Yi Xian, but it did not mean that they would love him for his sake. It was the same for the demonic race. All the native ferocious beasts in the depths of the root of all evil starfield had some desolate era bloodline in them. They had their own pride, and it was already good enough that they acknowledged Yi Xian and sincerely followed him. Yi Xian did not intend to force them to do the same for the demonic race. In fact, as far as Yi Xian was concerned, the devil cultivator was only a relatively close ally. In this battle, many of the demonic race would die, and so would the native ferocious beasts. When Yi Xian took them out of the Farmer God Cauldron, he had already specifically reminded them of this point. However, when these foodies heard that they were going to hunt soon, and it was going to be a large-scale hunt at that, and that they might not be able to finish the food they had accumulated in a year after the battle, they immediately felt as if they had just been injected with chicken blood, and started to shout excitedly. As for the so-called death, these native ferocious beasts obviously did not care at all. In the environment of the starry sky, if they wanted to survive, they had to take all kinds of risks. If they did not even dare to take the risk of dying in a battle, they would not be able to go far at all. In short, whether it was the demonic race or the nearly 6 million powerful native ferocious beasts, they were all ready for a fierce battle. After this battle, they would either soar into the sky and eat to their heart's content, or die without regrets. A day passed quickly. From the left and right corners of the void, the 2 large camps were slowly approaching. They were already close to the central domain of the demonic race. They were not far from the Demon Emperor domain. Chapter 4005. The 11 Immortals. This time all came in person. But at this moment, all of them had perfectly concealed their figures outside of the void and were lying dormant in different parallel planes. If they hadn't kept a trace of their divine sense to pay attention to the situation here at all times, they probably wouldn't even have been able to capture this obscure aura. In fact, even if the 11 immortal old monsters were paying attention to the situation in this plane at all times, the starry sky experts below the immortal realm still couldn't capture their aura. In the void ahead, the 2 armies were slowly advancing towards the Demon Emperor 3 stars. No one sensed that there were 11 immortal old monsters following closely behind them tens of millions of miles away. Even the commanders of the major clans, although they knew that the immortal old monsters behind the clans had already moved out and must be paying attention here, they didn't know where they were. However, the 11 immortal old monsters all knew of each other's existence. At the same time, they also knew that the ancestor of the demon cultivator race must have already captured their auras and knew that there were 11 immortal old monsters of the same level approaching. It was very difficult for an immortal old monster to fall, unless the disparity in battle strength between them was too great, or if one side had some kind of extremely powerful killing treasure, such as the Rai-Di seal in the hands of Yixian, the Shenlong cauldron, and the like. It was just a fight between two immortal old monsters of the same level. At most, there would be a situation of some serious injuries. Even if the weaker side was no match for the enemy, at least they could escape, at most paying a certain price. But this time was different. The 11 immortal old monsters had arrived at the same time. The demon man ancestor was almost doomed. In the opinion of the 11 immortal old monsters who were about to approach the demon emperor 3 stars, the other party either didn't appear and watched the demon man race be destroyed. The demon man star area and even the entire vast first universe plane would be divided by the powerful allied forces from the other two planes. Or once he appeared, he would definitely die. 11 immortal realm old monsters at the same level as him were enough to seal the entire star area the moment he appeared. Even the immortal realm old monsters couldn't tear open the void and leave. They could only grit their teeth and stay behind to be killed. This was definitely a wonderful feeling. For these 11 immortal old monsters, being able to annihilate a powerful clan and kill an immortal old monster at the same level was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. These 11 immortal old monsters didn't intend to act rashly. In their opinion, this was just a group of demons within the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor. They couldn't even resist the 50 million soldiers in front of them. Their target this time was the foundation ancestor of the demon kin race, as well as the ant-like junior who had the ability and means to kill an undying being, the younger brother of the demon kin, Mo Jinfeng. Mo Jinfeng, the younger brother of the demon kin race, was confirmed to be within the 3 stars of the Demon Emperor. However, even though he had the means to kill an undying being, he was still just a star lord. Even if the 4 great evildoers were one, and they were known as the number 1 of the younger generation in the world, no matter how monstrous they were, they still hadn't grown up. Therefore, although the 11 immortal old monsters listed him as a target to be killed or captured, they didn't really regard him as an important target. The only one they were really interested in was the foundation ancestor of the demon kin race. Until the foundation ancestor of the demon kin showed up, the 11 immortal old monsters from the other 2 planes wouldn't take action, nor would they interfere with the battle at the front line. What they needed to do was to follow the army of the 2 camps into the Demon Emperor star area, and pay close attention to the slightest movement. Once the foundation ancestor of the demon kin race showed up, they would immediately seal off the entire star area and attack the immortal old monster of the enemy camp. They would start to suppress and kill. As long as they could do this and deal with the ancestor of the demon race, it would be equivalent to solving all the worries in the future. They wouldn't even need to stay in the first universe for a long time. The subsequent matters of dividing up the benefits and seizing the territory would be managed by the clan below. The upper echelons would be in charge. The 11 immortal old monsters were tens of millions of kilometers away from the terrifying fleet of the 2 camps in front of them. They didn't enter the Demon Emperor star area at first. But now, as the huge fleet of the 2 camps advanced forward for a day, they had already entered the central region of the demon domain. Although the 11 immortal old monsters behind them were still dormant in the parallel space, the wisps of immortal divine sense they had extended had finally officially entered. They entered the Demon Emperor star area. It was also at this moment that the 11 immortal old monsters sensed something at the same time. The strands of immortal divine sense that they had extended all shook slightly. After a short period of dead silence, they began to secretly communicate with each other with surprise and suspicion. Ha! This is the aura of an immortal old monster? That's right. It's definitely the resentment left behind by an immortal old monster when he died. Although there's no specific consciousness, it's extremely clear. It hasn't been more than 5 days. It seems to be more than 1, at least 2. What happened? Within 5 days, 2 immortals have been killed in this Demon Emperor star area? Who did it? The foundation ancestor of the Demon Emperor star area? This is definitely intentional. It's meant to warn us. Otherwise, why would an immortal old monster leave behind such a clear resentment after killing the immortal old monster? The other party's intention is obvious. It's to let us know that in the past 5 days, he has killed 2 immortals in this Demon Emperor star area. He has killed at least 2 immortals in this Demon Emperor star area. You want to scare us with just this? 2 immortals and 11 immortals are 2 completely different concepts. What's more, the two immortals who were unfortunately killed were most likely tricked by him and killed separately. I don't believe that this Demon Emperor Star Area ancestor has the ability to fight one against two and kill two immortals of the same level. He has the strength of an immortal old monster. That's too childish. His mind has clearly been thrown into chaos, and he's even using such a low-level and laughable trick. If he really had the strength to kill two undyings of the same level at the same time, why would he intentionally reveal it? When the time comes to suddenly explode in the middle of the battle, the killing power is even stronger. Damn, he's tough on the outside but weak on the inside. Chapter 4006. Several Immortal Realm old monsters secretly gave orders. The fleets of the two camps, which had been slowly advancing, immediately sped up. In just half a day, they had entered the Demon Emperor Star Area and stopped in the void 20 million miles away from the inner defense circle of the 3 stars Demon Emperor Star Area. In an instant, the atmosphere in the vast Demon Emperor Star Area was extremely oppressive and tense. More than 70 million battleships were divided into 3 camps, each occupying a void and facing each other. Outside the inner defense circle of the 3 stars Demon Emperor Star were nearly 20 million battleships of the demon race and more than 5 million ferocious native beasts that had shown their bloodline true bodies. In the opposite void 20 million miles away, there were 2 camps of troops, one on the left and one on the right, each with more than 25 million troops. On the left was the allied army of the 2 camps of the human race in the third universe and the headquarters of the Wanluo Federation. On the right was the allied army of the various races in the second universe. Today, the various races of the second universe had already withdrawn from the myriad Luo Federation. Therefore, these 2 camps did not communicate with each other. Although their purpose was the same, they were extremely cold. It was obvious that there was no possibility of cooperation. Even if the war started later, these 2 attacking camps would fight for themselves. After arriving at the battlefield, the battleship armies of the 2 camps immediately began to arrange their troops. This was necessary. After all, each camp had more than 25 million battleships. With such a large number of battleships, if they did not arrange their troops properly, it would be difficult to command them when the battle started. Reasonable. The arrangement of 20 million troops could not be completed in a short time. It would take at least half a day. During this time, the commanders of the 2 camps, in an aloof and arrogant manner, began to shout to the demon camp in the void 20 million miles ahead. Demon race. Mo Yefeng has disturbed the 3 dimensions and committed many evil deeds. Immediately hand him over and withdraw your troops for investigation. Otherwise, today's war is inevitable. The calamity of the 3 stars Demon Emperor Star is coming, and the survival of the entire demon race is on the line. The first to speak was the Wanluo Federation. The commander-in-chief of the Senlon fleet, Sal, said in a tough tone and went straight to the point. He demanded the demon race to hand over his brother Mo Yefeng, or he would launch a crusade by force. Gong Shouxin, the vice palace master of Tiangongju, who was the commander-in-chief of the 10 million battleships of the human clan, also snorted coldly. His words were clearly even more impolite. What 4 great evildoers in one body? They are clearly evil worshippers who bring calamity to the world. Whether it is young Master Linghu, young Master Netherworld, or the immemorial little devil ape, they have all brought calamity to a region. This time, my Tenju Celestial Palace has come to suppress them, and we must exterminate them. As soon as he finished his words, Long Xianxia, an elder of the immortal dynasty from the human race's science and technology camp, also voiced his support. Demons, don't make a mistake. Today, little Mo must be beheaded. Whether you and your race turn back from the wrong path or go down the wrong path and be buried with him depends on a single thought. In the blink of an eye, the 3 half-step immortal realm experts had made their stance clear. It was as if they had already sentenced Mo Ju Feng to death, and that he was destined to die today. The atmosphere in the corner of the void where the 3 sides were facing each other became even more tense. The other factions in the second universe didn't want to be outdone either. Without waiting for the demon to respond, the 9 half-step immortal realm masters who were commanding the meeting started to speak. They weren't condemning anymore, they were cursing and scolding. What's with all this nonsense? You humans are all hypocrites. Are you really going to retreat immediately after they hand over that Linghu brat? Humph. Don't even think about it. That little Ling who has done a lot of harm to the races in the second universe. Today, we must settle this matter with the demons. That's right. A little demon junior dares to blackmail the races in the second universe. And again and again. This is intolerable. First, he used the identity of Linghu Brat to wreak havoc. Then, he used the identity of Netherworld Brat to stir up trouble in the second universe. In the end, he turned into that damned little demon ape brat and entered the source of all evil, ruining the plans of the allied forces of all races. All of these are blood feuds. Hate. Today, everything will come to an end. A mere demon junior can't do such a thing. We have every reason to suspect that little Mo is being plotted by the entire upper echelon of the demon race. Today, even if we hand over little Mo, the demon race must be punished. Little Ling who must die today. As for the entire demon race, either all of them withdraw from the battleship and accept the investigation, or the entire race will be wiped out. Roar. Screech. Speaking of the past, the 9 half-step immortals from the various races of the second universe gradually became agitated. Their words became sharper and sharper, scolding the entire demon race and Xianxia until they were completely useless. They were simply supreme evils that brought disaster to the human world. Facing all of this, in a command cabin on the top floor of a starry sky fortress 20 million miles away, a group of upper echelons led by the demon emperor Mo Zuantian looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They sighed speechlessly. Although the other party's words were extremely unpleasant and even infuriating, from a certain point of view, it was no wonder these old guys were so agitated. Plus, what they said was basically the truth. Whether it was little Ling Hu, little Master Yu Ming, or little immemorial demon ape, they had indeed caused quite a lot of trouble to the various races and top forces in the 3 dimensions. In particular, the races of the second universe had suffered even more. In the first incident of the source of all evil, the primordial little demon ape had tormented the races of the second universe until they were on the brink of death. They had almost lost their temper. Now that they knew that these 3 identities were actually all Mo Jinfeng, the imperial younger brother of the demon race, these old fellows recalled the past. When they thought about how the existence that made them gnash their teeth was right in front of them, how could they not feel hatred? Thinking of this, the expressions of the upper echelons of the demon race became more and more worried. The current demon emperor Mo Wentian even turned to look at Mo Zuantian after pondering for a moment. He asked anxiously, "Old ancestor, look at how those old guys hate little friend Ling Hu to the bone. They look like they want to eat him alive. If we agree with little friend and allow him to enter the enemy camp alone, I'm afraid this is a bit inappropriate, right? After all, there are still some immortal-level old monsters lurking in the dark. It's not just 1 or 2, but at least 10 of them. If we allow little friend to enter the enemy camp like this, and if an accident happens, I'm afraid even the old ancestor will be afraid to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. If that's the case, we will be in a completely passive situation." Chapter 4007. The demons didn't respond to the scolding and condemnation of the 2 camps. It was as if they couldn't be bothered. The long camp line was silent, as if they didn't hear anything at all. This was very infuriating. Sal of the Myriad Luo Federation Senate and Gong Wuxin and Long Xixia, the commander-in-chief of the human race's fleets, were still fine. They restrained themselves for the time being and didn't act up. However, the upper echelons of the 9 great races of the second universe were all hot-tempered, especially the 9 half-step undyings who formed the huge camp commanding council. They couldn't stand such disrespect and were furious. "Demons, are you looking for death? You actually ignored our warning and didn't respond. This is blatant disregard. We must punish them. Take action immediately. This is infuriating. They are already at death's door, yet they are still so arrogant. The demons are too stubborn. We need to wake them up with a bang. No need to wait. Send out an elite army and teach them a heavy lesson." Rumble. As the 9 half-step undyings roared, an army of 1,000,000 battleships sailed out from the second universe's camp on the right. They were all fortresses and strongholds, heading straight for the central region 20 million miles away. Just these 1,000,000 battleships were naturally no match for the entire demon army, which had more than 25 million battleships and ferocious beasts. However, the 9 half-step undyings didn't think the demons would dare to fight back. The difference in strength was too obvious. The demons were at an absolute disadvantage. To put it simply, these 9 half-step immortal realm experts felt they had the right to be arrogant. At this moment, the 1,000,000 elite battleships were moving forward and were about to attack. It was like a confrontation between 2 strong warriors. The stronger side would step forward and slap the other side in the face. The weaker side, no matter how angry they were, could only endure. Once they fought back, they would be completely suppressed. As the million battleships sailed out, they gradually approached the central region that was 20 million kilometers in size. On the left, within the huge camp from the Third Universe, Saga, Gongshou Xian and Xianxia, the three half-step Undying commanders all snorted coldly. Humph! Those 9 old fogies are just taking the opportunity to show off their strength and build momentum in advance for the division of benefits after the destruction of the demon-kin race. Unfortunately, this time, the armies of the two great dimensions are gathering at the same time to suppress the demon-kin. The allied forces of the various races of the Second Universe are not the main force. Isn't it just a slap in the face to create momentum? We know how to do it too. Gentlemen, let's each send out an army and gather 1 million battleships. We can't let the races of the Second Universe monopolize this. Seconded. The 3 grand commanders had already given their orders, and the fleet below quickly departed. The immortal army of the human race's technology faction, and the 10 ultimate celestial palace of the cultivation faction, each dispatched 500,000 battleships and battleships. The myriad Net Federation's Senlon fleet also dispatched 500,000 battleships. The 3 forces gathered a total of 1,500,000 battleships and battleships, which was even larger than the 1 million battleships sent out by the Second Universe. With great momentum, they drove at full speed toward the central domain of the battlefield in front of them. This was clearly the 2 great subjugation camps taking action at the same time. They were going to teach the arrogant demon-kin race a lesson before the official battle began. The army of 2,500,000 battleships and battleships soon arrived at the central domain of the battlefield in front of them. They were only 10 million miles away from the long defensive line of the demon-kin race in front of them, and the battleship cannons entered the range of attack. If there were no accidents, these 2,500,000 battleships would open fire at any time. They would fire at the same time and blast out dense energy light beams like rain to punish the arrogance and rudeness of the demon-kin race. Just at this moment, an unexpected change happened. Whoosh! A faint air-braking sound rang out. In the void 2 to 3 million miles away in front of the 2,500,000 battleships, a figure suddenly appeared without warning. It was Xianxia, who appeared in the identity of the demon-kin race's royal brother. You are just a bunch of chickens and dogs. How dare you clamor and denounce me here? Today, I will make sure you can't leave. Prepare to die. Xianxia roared the last word. At the same time, he waved his hand and summoned the starry sky war Raja of the undying world in his body. It was completely blood-red. It was the weeping soul war Raja. Seeing this scene, the countless experts from the 3 camps that were facing each other from 20 million kilometers away were dumbfounded. Xianxia hadn't shown himself before, so no one knew where he was. However, he didn't expect him to suddenly appear at such a critical moment. Moreover, he was so arrogant that he was going to destroy the front by himself. These 2,500,000 elite battleships. Almost at the same time, within these 2,500,000 elite battleships and battleships, there were a large number of panicked screams. The Demonkin's royal brother, Mo Jinfeng? Heavens, this guy is actually hiding in the void and wants to attack us. Weeping Soul War Raja. He actually summoned the Weeping Soul War Raja. Turn around. Turn around immediately. The Weeping Soul War Raja is everywhere. The power of this killing weapon is too terrifying. Turn around immediately and avoid the War Raja's giant mouth. It's too late. The battleships are too densely packed. It will take time to turn around, but the terrifying War Raja can be activated at any time. Abandon ship. Everyone abandon ship and scatter in all directions. Try to survive as much as possible. Roar! Roar, roar! In the midst of the chaos, a large number of starry sky experts rushed out of the battleships. In the blink of an eye, the 2,500,000 elite battleships were surrounded by experts from various races. When the roars rang out, all the experts except for the human race revealed their bloodline true bodies. Because this allowed them to move faster, everyone was scared out of their wits in the face of the Weeping Soul War Raja. They only wanted to use all their strength to escape the range of this killing weapon's giant mouth as quickly as possible. But at this moment, without waiting for them to turn around, Xianxia ordered the Weeping Soul War Raja to activate at full power. Screech! A shrill howl rang out. After being refined by the Thunder Marsh Spirit Mist, The tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts and the thousands of beehive nodes in the Weeping Soul battle scroll had all evolved into Grotto Heaven Realm Weeping Soul golden apes. There were even 300,000 Genesis Realm Weeping Soul purple apes. Chapter 4008. Screech. The chilling screech of the Weeping Soul resounded in the void. The entire vast and boundless star field seemed to tremble under the sudden arrival of this violent howl. It was a terrifying howl that seemed to be able to tear apart the heavens. It immediately caused countless experts in the nearby void to tremble violently. Even their minds and consciousnesses were in a daze at this moment. It was as if their spiritual bodies were being drawn by the howl and were about to leave their bodies. In the void in front of them, an invisible tide like an ocean in the starry sky suddenly leaked out from the core node. It followed the outer 9 rings of the war drum and continued to expand. Finally, it turned into an invisible force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. In an instant, it covered the vast void directly facing the mouth of the huge horn. The bottom was enveloped. Ah! Ah! In the void, miserable howls rang out one after another. They were all extremely short, but they covered the sky and the earth. They were densely packed and continued endlessly, causing a great terror that made one's back shiver and scalp tighten to spread out in an instant, enveloping this corner of the starry sky. The scene was too strange. The extreme contrast between vision and hearing gave people a completely unreal feeling. In the central area of the battlefield, the 2.5 million elite battleships did not move at all. They were not affected in the slightest, but the experts of various races who had already rushed out of the battleships trembled violently at this moment. Everyone's expression was ferocious, and blood was flowing from their 7 orifices, as if they were enduring great pain. Although the Weeping Soul Wardrum's Weeping Soul Wardrum did not possess any physical attack power, it was precisely because of this that its attack effect on the soul, spirit, consciousness, and other levels was even more shocking and horrifying. Previously, the experts of various races in the 2.5 million elite battleships were well aware of this point. That was why they were so panicked when they saw Xianxia suddenly appear and wave his hand to summon a blood-colored Weeping Soul Wardrum. Any expert would be most fearful of this kind of soul-level attack. Although the experts of the starry sky who had hurriedly fled from the 2.5 million elite battleships were of different races, including the human race and the experts of various races of the second universe, but in the face of the Weeping Soul Wardrum, they were equally frightened. The Weeping Soul Beast's Weeping Soul spiritual wave was not only effective against demons who possessed spiritual power, but it was also effective against human cultivators who cultivated the primordial spirit, as well as the consciousness level of other races or life forms, such as electronic consciousness, crystal consciousness, and so on. At this time, all the experts in the void, including the few who were still inside the 2,500,000 elite warships, were affected by the Weeping Soul howl. At present, the Weeping Soul Battle Kara could insta-kill any being below the 15th level of cultivation with a single full-powered attack. In other words, if one's cultivation hadn't reached the level of an almighty figure of the universe, then there was no chance of survival under the devastation of this soul-crying howl. At this time, the howling sound rang out. Among the countless starry sky masters, only 100 or so universe masters clenched their teeth and performed void teleportation, escaping the area covered by the Weeping Soul howl. However, even though they had managed to survive the Weeping Soul howl, their souls had suffered quite a bit of damage. It was likely that they would not be able to recover in a short period of time. This scene was too tragic. In the void, the shrill and ear-piercing howl lasted for only a second before it completely disappeared and could no longer be heard. Then, 2 seconds later, as if in response to this howl, the countless miserable howls that appeared following this howl also completely disappeared. In just a breath of time, the void returned to silence, a deathly silence. The 2,500,000 elite warships were still standing there, undamaged, but they had already become ghost warships. There was not a single living person inside or outside the warships. In the void outside a large number of warships, they were densely packed with corpses. They were all floating corpses. These starry sky masters, even though all of them had revealed their enormous bloodline true bodies, were still unable to escape the calamity. Xianxia had acted too quickly. With a Weeping Soul howl, he had instantly determined the outcome of the battle. All of this happened too quickly. In the blink of an eye, almost all of the starry sky masters in the 2,500,000 elite warships had perished. Only a little more than 100 universe realm masters had managed to escape. As far as the eye could see, this corner of the void of the central battlefield domain was densely packed with corpses of various races experts. The human race was the minority, only about a quarter of them. Basically, they were all the bloodline true bodies of various races experts of the second universe. Facing this horrifying scene, countless experts from the three camps who were facing each other from 20 million miles away were collectively speechless and dumbfounded. Even Sal, Gong Shou Xin, Long Xixia, and the 9 half-step immortal realm masters in the second universe's camp's command council were all in a daze. They came back to their senses. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian waved his hand and directly stored the Weeping Soul Battle Talisman into the undying world within his body. This time, the tens of millions of Weeping Soul beasts within the Weeping Soul Battle Talisman weren't completely exhausted and still had the ability to attack. At the same time, he turned around and looked in the direction of the demon camp behind him. His gaze fell on the area where more than 5 million indigenous ferocious beasts were gathered. Rolling his eyes, he grinned and said, "What are you waiting for? This king has already helped you kill the prey. Do you want this king to deliver all the food to you one by one?" That's right. The reason why Yi Xian used the Weeping Soul battle armor at the beginning was to help these gluttonous ferocious beasts collect some meat to eat. The void in front of them was now densely packed with bloodline avatars of various races experts. It was enough for each of the 5 million gluttonous ferocious beasts to eat dozens of corpses. Of course, the other quarter were human corpses. Yi Xian had already ordered that no ferocious beasts were allowed to touch them. If the situation forced him to, he could start a war with the human race, but he would never allow the ferocious beasts to eat human corpses. Roar! Roar, roar! As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the primordial porcupine and the primordial tortoise immediately raised their heads and let out a heaven-shaking roar. Immediately after, the nearly 6 million ferocious beasts behind them all howled in excitement as if they had just been injected with chicken blood. In the blink of an eye, the 5 million indigenous ferocious beasts' eyes turned green. There were at least 30 to 40 million bloodline avatars in front of them. They were all incomparably large. In their eyes, this was clearly an incomparably fresh meat to eat. It was probably still warm today. If they kept it, it would be enough to eat for a long time. In the next instant, without needing anyone to say anything, the immemorial porcupine and immemorial tortoise took the lead and rushed forward. Behind them, close to 6 million indigenous ferocious beasts were densely packed. Each of them had green light in their eyes as they rushed forward like a rolling tide. Chapter 4009. In just a few breaths of time, a huge change happened. The 5 million elite battleships weren't damaged in the slightest, and they were still suspended in the void of the central territory ahead of them. However, all the experts of the various clans within the battleships had already fallen, and only a little over 100 supreme figures of the universe had escaped with heavy injuries to their souls. The 5 million elite battleships were originally sent by the two camps to slap the demon in the face. They were sure that the demon wouldn't dare to fight back. However, the result made them pale. Before they could slap the demon had already slapped his own face. Slap. After that, he even spat a mouthful of phlegm on his face. Even though all the experts in the 5 million battleships were dead, the demon's royal brother, Jianghu, didn't seem to want to stop. He turned around and summoned millions of ferocious beasts to collect the corpses. Without a doubt, this so-called collection of corpses was the process of treating the corpses of the experts of various races in the void as food. They would be preserved and slowly enjoyed. This was simply unbearable. Sal, Gong Shou Xin, Long Xixia, and the 9 half-step immortal realm experts of the second universe were so angry that their bodies were shaking. Their faces were ashen, and they almost spurted blood. Now, they almost wanted to skin the demon's royal brother, Jianghu, alive. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enough to quench their hatred. However, when they turned around and summoned the millions of ferocious beasts, the culprit, Jianghu, strangely disappeared from the spot. No one could sense or capture his aura. Sal, Gong Shou Xin, Long Xixia, and the 9 half-step immortal realm experts of the second universe all clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. They roared madly and issued new orders. Attack immediately and send these damned vicious beasts to the afterlife. Attack. All the big fortresses. Attack immediately. Rush over as fast as possible and annihilate these damn gluttons. Hong long long. Boom. As the order was given, a large number of strongholds of various sizes rushed out from the two camps in front of them. The reason why they did not open fire immediately was that the void where they were arranged was still more than 12 million miles away from the 5 million elite battleships that had already arrived at the central battlefield. Distance. The optimal firing range of the naval cannons was within 10 million kilometers. Otherwise, even if they fired at such a long distance, the energy beam of the naval cannons wouldn't be able to cause much damage to the native beasts. There was even a high possibility that the other party would be able to dodge the attack with nimble movements. In the blink of an eye, more than 1 million fortresses of various sizes rushed out from the two camps. This was the first batch of battle forces, and they rushed toward the central battlefield at high speed. Behind them, there were more fortresses, big and small, rushing out of the camp. There were only a few million native ferocious beasts in front of them. Mo Jiofeng, the Demon King's younger brother, who was riding on the Weeping Soul Warrior Warlord, had already retreated, so they had nothing to fear. It was also at this time that Mo Jinfeng, the younger brother of the demon race who had just disappeared, unexpectedly reappeared in the void a few thousand miles away from the two camps. Swish! With a wave of his hand, another warlord appeared. This time, the warlord that was summoned was completely gray and black in color. It was the Void Warlord that used the Void Soldier Ladle as its kinetic energy. Today's Void Warlord, there were already 2 9-star Emperor Ladles at the peak of the 9th step of the universe and 10 8-star Wang Ladles at the peak of the universe realm. At this moment, after it was summoned, Yi Xian immediately gave the order to attack. However, it was not fully activated. Wang! Wang! A dense and weak void trembling sound suddenly rang out. The effect far exceeded the movement that a large number of void vibrators could create at the same time. It even gave people the illusion that the entire vast and boundless demon realm was trembling under the sudden arrival of this high-frequency buzzing sound. Before the countless experts of the three camps could react, a new unforeseen event occurred again. A strange ripple visible to the naked eye rushed out from the huge mouth of the Void Warlord. Its speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it had already rushed forward. The first million strongholds of the two camps that rushed out were the first to be hit by the light. Before they could react, they were already enveloped by the ripple. Slash. Boom. Rumble. In the next moment, a huge rumbling sound instantly resounded like a tide, as if the sky was collapsing. This boundless and terrifying invisible spiritual energy that was like a tsunami in space instantly rushed forward. The first to bear the brunt of the impact were the millions of strongholds of various sizes. Other than a few who had time to perform a space jump and dodge to the back or the sides of the camp that could not be enveloped by the giant spirit tsunami, the rest were almost all. They were all affected. In an instant, 1 million strongholds of various sizes were like paper paste. Under this invisible spiritual hurricane, they didn't even last half an instant before they collapsed and shattered. However, when this invisible spiritual hurricane blew here, its power had basically passed the most powerful eruption period, but its residual power still existed. After completely destroying 1 million strongholds of various sizes, the remnants of the spiritual hurricane spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it reached even more ships that couldn't escape in time. Although this time, not many ships disintegrated and collapsed, it was inevitable that some of them would be damaged. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it had only been 5 or 6 seconds from the roar of the war to the current moment when the power was completely vented, but the change was as if a lifetime had passed. The entire void was densely filled with the wreckage and debris of countless battleships. There was even a large area of the void that had collapsed. As far as the eye could see, there were countless void rifts of various sizes. Each of them had some terrifying void turbulence surging out. There were even small black hole-like void turbulence vortexes that made one shiver at the sight of them. These turbulence vortexes slowly expanded outward, and the invisible suction force they emitted became stronger and stronger. A large number of battleship wreckages had already been sucked into the turbulence vortexes and disappeared. However, this was not the end. A wave of spiritual ripples only blasted an area of millions of kilometers into a void turbulence filled with countless cracks and small vortexes. However, this was far from the true purpose of Yi Xian taking the risk to approach the enemy camp. Almost without any hesitation, in the next second, Yi Xian directly adjusted the void war chariot under his feet. The huge mouth of the war chariot quickly turned and pointed in another direction. It happened to be to the left of the chaotic void that had collapsed a moment ago, right next to it. Before anyone could understand what had happened, Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a bright light. He suddenly waved his hand and gave the order to launch another bombardment. Buzz! Chapter 40:10. Buzz! Wang! A low buzzing sound that caused one's scalp to go numb rang out. Before anyone could recover from their shock, Xian had already activated the void battle pull once again. A second ripple of space visible to the naked eye rushed out from the huge mouth of the war pull and whizzed out. Slash. Boom! A huge explosion rang out, as well as the crisp sound of ripping silk. However, this time, the second ripple of space created by the void battle pull instantly disintegrated all kinds of battleships, but there were only a few 100,000 of them. Compared to the total number of battleships in the two camps that numbered more than 50 million, it was simply negligible. Even though the void battle pull had been upgraded by the Thunder Swamp Spirit Mist and its power had increased, it could only create 7 or 8 similar ripples in the air. No matter what, the first ripple of space had dealt with 1,000,000 strongholds of varying sizes, and its battle record was quite impressive. However, the result of the second ripple of space was truly speechless. Xian's actions gave people the feeling that he had already lost his footing and was wasting the kinetic energy of the war pull. However, in reality, Xian was extremely satisfied with the result of the second ripple of space. It had nothing to do with the hundreds of thousands of battleships that had been torn apart in an instant. The reason why he was satisfied was because the second ripple of space had also blasted out a region of space turbulence that was millions of kilometers wide in front of him. This was Xian's goal. However, the second wave was clearly not the end. It could even be said that it was only the beginning. After the second wave of ripples exploded out, Xian still did not hesitate. In the next second, he directly adjusted the direction of the void battle pull beneath his feet. The huge mouth of the war pull quickly turned and pointed in a third direction, which happened to be on the right side of the chaotic void that had collapsed first. Next to each other. Then, Xian's eyes flashed with a bright light. He suddenly waved his hand and gave the order to launch another attack. Buzz! Wang! A low buzzing sound that made people's scalps numb arose. Another ripple visible to the naked eye shot out from the huge mouth of the Xianxia, roaring and roaring. It was followed by another deafening explosion and the crisp sound of fabric being torn apart. But this time, the number of warships that were torn apart by the third wave of space ripples was even fewer. There were only 60 to 70,000 warships. After 3 consecutive bombardments, the 3 void ripples consumed a large amount of the war pulsar's kinetic energy. The battle results were getting less and less, but Xian was still enjoying it. After waving his hand and putting away the void battle pulsar, his figure disappeared. After performing a few teleportations, he soon crossed thousands of miles of void and came to the left edge of the turbulent void created by the second void ripple. In the next moment, the void battle pulsar that had just been put away appeared again. It lay across the void and was immediately activated. The fourth void ripple whizzed out from the huge mouth of the war pulsar. This time, although some warships were still torn apart, the number was still embarrassing. There were only a few tens of thousands of warships. However, the void in front of the war pulsar, which was millions of miles in diameter, turned into a turbulent void full of void cracks and countless small vortexes, just like the previous 3 times. Bring! In just over 20 breaths, 4 turbulent vortexes had appeared in this area. Each of them was millions of miles in diameter. They were lined up in a row, and the gap between them was only a few tens of thousands of miles. It was so narrow that only 10,000 warships could pass through side by side. At this point, almost all the experts of the 3 camps had understood the real purpose of Xian's actions. This was clearly a blockade. He wanted to block the 50 million warships of the 2 camps in front of him with a line of large-scale turbulent void. Even if there were gaps between the turbulent void, each gap was only a few tens of thousands of miles long, only enough to allow 10,000 warships to pass through side by side. Once this goal was successfully achieved, the more than 50 million battleships of the 2 opposing factions would instantly lose their deterrence effect. No matter how many soldiers they had, they would only have a few narrow paths to get through. If you have the ability to come here, I will set up a formation at the end of the narrow path and wait for you. If a small team comes out, I will immediately wipe it out. Of course, the 50 million warships blocked by the turbulent void could also split into 2 and go around the 2 ends of the line formed by the turbulent void, then go around and meet up again. However, this would take a lot of time. During this time, the demon race had enough room to make other arrangements. In short, once this line of turbulent void was truly formed, the 50 million warships of the 2 camps would be completely passive from now on. Mo Jinfeng, the royal brother of the demon race, was clearly trying to turn the tide by himself. But now, these 4 turbulent voids, each with a diameter of 3 to 4 million miles, had formed a void barrier that was over 10 million miles long. If he were allowed to continue like this, he would be able to create another 4 or 5 such turbulent voids and connect them into a single line. At that time, the line of void would be more than 20 million miles long, and a natural void chasm would basically be formed. Even though the two large expeditionary camps had circled around from both sides, during this period of time, the demons had enough time to make more follow-up arrangements. The originally hopeless situation was instantly reversed. At the very least, they had won a glimmer of hope. Even in terms of high-end battle strength at the level of immortal old monsters, the demon race could only face being crushed. However, in terms of conventional battle strength, the two camps with a terrifying fleet of more than 50 million warships were forced to run for their lives by the demon race in the end. This was simply a disgrace. Regarding this, Sal, Gong Shou Xin, Long Xianxia, and the 9 half-step immortal old monsters in the command council of the various camps in the second universe absolutely couldn't accept this. It was too sullen. The few old monsters immediately roared and stamped their feet in anger. Stop him! Stop him now! Damn demon race, too cunning. He is already in a situation where death is certain, but he still wants to play this kind of trick. He has humiliated us. We can't atone for it even if we die 10,000 times. Kill this MO kid now. No matter what, we can't let this natural void chasm truly form. Otherwise, the 50 million warships of the two camps will be completely passive. This is too sullen. Stop him now. Roar! I will do it myself. I will skin this damn little bastard alive. Chapter 40:11. Wang! Wang! A deep buzzing sound that made one's scalp numb resounded. A fifth ripple visible to the naked eye rushed out from the huge mouth of the battlecruiser and whizzed out. This time, there wasn't even a loud explosion or the crisp sound of ripping fabric. The number of warships that were torn apart by this wave of space ripples was even fewer. There were only a few thousand of them. After all the experts of the two camps had basically seen through Yi Xian's purpose, and through this point, they had analyzed in advance where the battlecruiser under his feet was going to attack next. Therefore, the nearby battleships had basically already fled before this wave of ripples. Like stray dogs, they hurriedly avoided it. However, Yi Xian didn't mind in the slightest, because the effect of this wave of spatial ripples was still the same. The chaotic void in front of him, which had a diameter of 3 to 4 million kilometers, had already changed from 4 to 5. And the battlecruiser under his feet could barely be launched 3 more times. Without any hesitation, after adjusting the direction again, Yi Xian gave the order, and the 6th wave of ripples appeared. The 5 turbulent void space became 6 and lined up in the void space a million miles ahead. The horizontal distance of the void space had reached more than 20 million miles. There were still 2 waves of ripples left, but Yi Xian didn't intend to launch them here. The edge of this turbulent void space was already millions of miles away from the edge of the third universe's human camp on the left. It was enough. With a wave of his hand, the battlecruiser under his feet was put away, and Yi Xian's figure disappeared again. Now that he was a Star-Lord, even the immortal realm experts would have a hard time detecting his perfect vibration using the secret technique of spirit power. After hiding his figure, Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. He used his extreme speed and rushed to the other side of this horizontal sky barrier. He planned to launch the last 2 waves of ripples from that side. Once completed, the entire sky barrier would be completely formed, and the horizontal distance of the void space would be more than 3,000 miles. Thousands of miles away. What Yi Xian didn't know was that at the same time he disappeared, one of the 9 half-step immortal realm experts in the second universe sneered and stepped out of the flagship stronghold, disappearing in an instant. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the demon brother Mo Jinfeng wouldn't stop here. There would definitely be 1 or 2 more waves of ripples, and it would definitely be in the void space on the right side of the second universe's army. This half-step immortal realm expert didn't sense Yi Xian's direction at all. He was sure that he would go in that direction and rush to stop him. After a short 10 breaths, Yi Xian arrived at his destination and directly appeared. However, before he could wave of the void space in front of him, an extremely powerful pressure aura locked his figure in the void space on the right side of his body. This was a half-step immortal realm expert, whose cultivation base had reached universe 9th perfection. He came from the Yingji clan, one of the top 10 clans in the second universe. Many of the clan's experts and higher-ups had died at the hands of Linghu Young Master, Netherworld Young Master, and immemorial little ape demons. At this moment, as soon as the half-step immortal realm ancestor of the Inji clan appeared, he instantly revealed his bloodline true body and transformed into a huge bird that shone with a silver radiance. With a flap of his wings, he pounced towards Yi Xian. His sharp beak emitted a blazing silver light that emitted a golden radiance. It was obvious that he could pierce through metal and stone. This was the rhythm of cutting Yi Xian's abdomen open. Noisy! Yi Xian turned around and let out a roar. The aura around him surged and he waved his raised hand again. However, this time, although a war talisman was summoned, it wasn't the grayish-black void space talisman but the golden time talisman. Almost as soon as the time talisman appeared, Yi Xian gave the order to the cyan gold slime emperor inside the war talisman to launch an all-out attack. In the blink of an eye, the cyan gold slime emperor in the core node of the war talisman immediately took action. The 10 purple gold slime kings and tens of millions of gold slime kings in the thousands of beehive nodes all received the order to launch an all-out attack. Wang! A familiar buzzing sound was heard. Invisible ripples spread out from the cyan gold slime emperor's body and entered the walls of the beehive nodes. Along the pipes connected to the outer walls, the ripples were instantly transmitted to the thousands of beehive nodes of the time talisman, causing the tens of millions of slimes inside to tremble. The long golden threads under their abdomens bloomed with a dazzling golden light. Countless golden curtains overlapped with each other and gathered into one. Finally, the faint golden light turned into a faint purple gold light. Although the purple gold light was still rather faint, it was clearly visible. It represented the change in its power. There was even a hint of cyan gold light that was faintly discernible. Then, as if it had a mind of its own, it rushed into the walls of the beehive nodes one by one. Along the pipes on the outer walls, it flowed back to the core beehive node where the cyan gold slime emperor was located. All of this was completed in less than half an instant. The core beehive node in the central region of the 9th ring inside the war talisman's huge mouth suddenly lit up, erupting with a blazing purple gold light. In an instant, it turned into a purple gold world. Waves of purple gold ripples like tides instantly gave birth to a huge fan. Wide-shaped ripples. It rapidly expanded forward like a dazzling purple gold tide, pushing forward with a rumbling sound. This is... The 10,000 Zhonglong silver G-bird's figure froze and let out a cry of shock. He turned around and tried to escape. After all, the war talisman was too famous. It was said that there were even immortal realm old monsters that fell under its power. Unfortunately, everything was already too late. At this moment, this violet gold fan-shaped tide that represented the might of the passage of time had completely enveloped this corner of space, and some sort of mysterious might had already swept out, causing Inji Qin's figure to stiffen. It seemed as if it had been sealed, and it was fixed in that expanse of space and was unable to move at all. This was really too sullen. A dignified half-step immortal realm expert actually couldn't even move his body. He was so furious that the killing intent in his eyes was so dense that it almost materialized. He gritted his teeth and endured. Walala! The purple gold tide of time flowed past, and the silver G-bird's huge true body instantly changed. The countless feathers that were originally shining with silver light had completely dimmed in less than half an instant, falling into a gray state. Then, as the purple gold tide flowed past his body, these gray feathers fell off one by one at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, he became a bald chicken. But this was not the end, because the purple gold tide had not completely flowed past. Large pieces of flesh began to peel off, and in less than half an instant, it had already spread all over his body, causing his entire true body to become riddled with holes. Many of his internal organs were even exposed. There were even some organs that, because of the loss of flesh and blood, lost the strength to support them and directly fell out of his abdomen, first floating into the void. Chapter 40:12. Ordinary immortal realm old monsters, if they didn't have any special encounters, could live up to 100,000 years. The silver owl bird in front of him was only at the universe grade 9 perfection. Although it was known as a half-step immortal, it wasn't a true immortal old monster. And now, in the War of Time, a wave of purple gold tide blasted out, representing the instantaneous passage of 30,000 years. Although it wasn't enough to cause him to die on the spot, he was already half dead. It could be said that he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand the second wave. As a matter of fact, this half-step immortal Inji clan ancestor would have fallen in just half a wave of similar time tides. However, Yi Xian clearly didn't plan to use it again. Not long ago, the Battle of Time had just unleashed 3 waves of Tide of Time. Now it was already the fourth wave. There were probably only 3 or 4 waves left. Each wave was very precious, and he couldn't waste it on a half-step immortal. With a wave of his hand, the Time War talisman was put away. At this moment, the Yingji clan's half-step immortal expert was on the verge of death. He wouldn't die, but he was in a half-dead state. Yi Xian didn't even take out the Shenong cauldron. With a wave of his hand, he sucked him into the cauldron's space. If he was at his peak, Yi Xian would have to rely on the domain of the Shenong cauldron to capture a half-step undying that was far stronger than him. But now that he was on the brink of death, Yi Xian could directly absorb him into the cauldron with his own strength. At the same time, he took out the void battle claws again and aimed at the void in front of him. The sixth wave of void ripples instantly blasted out. In just a short moment, another turbulent void zone with a diameter of 3 to 4 million kilometers appeared in front of them. However, this was still not the end. According to Yi Xian's estimation, the void battlehammer should be able to blast out one more void ripple. This would be the last wave. After this wave of attacks, the void battle claws could no longer be used in a short period of time. The tens of millions of void soldier ladles that acted as the kinetic energy of the battle claws needed some time to recover. As for the other 3 great Starry Skies war claws, the Time War claws still had 3 to 4 waves of purple-gold tidal force. The Weeping Soul war claws still had a wave of full-powered Weeping Soul war claws that could kill anyone below the level of Universe Realm. As for the Blood Mosquito war claws, it should be able to unleash its full power once more. In a short period of time, almost half of the power of the 4 great war hulas had been depleted. This was very helpless, but Yi Xian had no other choice. This was the situation. With absolute determination, a light flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. He suddenly waved his hand and gave the order to attack once again. Buzz! Buzz! A deep buzzing sound that made people's scalps numb resounded. The 8th visible ripple in the void rushed out from the huge mouth of the Zhanla and whizzed out. The thunderous explosion and the crisp sound of ripping could not be heard at all. Not a single battleship was torn apart by this wave of space ripples. The only thing that could be heard was the cracking noises of space ripples, which were as dense as raindrops, echoing like tides. After the last wave of ripples exploded out, Yi Xian directly waved his hand and stored the void battle armor into the undying world within his body. When he looked over, a complacent and sinister smile appeared on his face. Millions of miles ahead of him, there were a total of 8 turbulent void streams reflected in his eyes. Each of them had a diameter of 3 to 4 million miles. The 8 turbulent void streams were lined up in a row, forming a void chasm that was more than 30 million miles long. It blocked the front, blocking the 2 great punitive expedition formations on the other side. The more than 50 million battleships of the camp were blocked mercilessly. Although there were gaps between the 8 turbulent void streams, there were 7 in total. Each gap was more than 100,000 miles long. It was like 7 narrow canyons. However, if the 2 camps on the other side passed through these 7 canyons, the 10,000 battleships that rushed out from the other side of the canyons would be thrown into chaos immediately. They would be destroyed by the cannons. As for splitting up and going around this long void chasm that was more than 30 million miles long, it would take a lot of time. It was enough for the demon race camp to make all kinds of follow-up arrangements. It could be said that with the formation of this long void chasm, the terrifying battleship army of more than 50 million battleships of the 2 camps on the other side of the chasm had lost its original deterrent force in an instant. They had fallen into an extremely disadvantageous and passive situation. This was the countermeasure that Yi Xian had thought of for a long time. Moreover, he had successfully completed it with his own strength. In the process, he even heavily injured and captured a half-step immortal ancestor of the second universe's Yingji clan alive. It had to be said that this was definitely a miracle. Everything happened too quickly. From the appearance of the first turbulent void stream to the formation of the entire void chasm, only a few minutes had passed. However, in such a short period of time, the 2 camp super battleships that originally had all the advantages and initiative completely lost their advantage and fell into a passive situation. All of this was like a dream. In just a few minutes, the current situation was completely different from before. And all of this was accomplished by Yi Xian's strength alone. Behind him, the demon race camp cheered like a mountain. In the central flagship fortress, the upper echelons of the demon race royal family looked at each other with relieved expressions. Before this, they were still worried about Yi Xian. They were worried that he would attract the attention of the upper echelons of the 2 camps by himself. If a few immortal old monsters locked onto him at the same time and carried out a decapitation operation, the demon race would fall into an extremely passive situation. Even the old ancestor of the demon race, who was already confident in this battle, would be restrained. It was hard to predict what would happen next. However, they never would have thought that the 10 immortal realm old monsters in the opposing camp would actually not make a move. It was unknown if it was because of their face or if they had other considerations. But in the end, Xianxia was able to reverse the originally disadvantageous situation with lightning speed in a few short minutes. In fact, during this period of time, a half-step immortal realm expert had tried to stop Xianxia from killing him. But in the end, Xianxia had crushed the half-step immortal realm expert with ease. Such a method was simply amazing. Everything he did was indeed worthy of the demon race's cheers, as if they were worshipping him. On the contrary, while countless demon race experts in the 20 million battleships of the demon race camp were cheering thunderously, on the other side of the void chasm that stretched for more than 30 million miles. In more than 50 million battleships of various types from the two expeditionary camps, the experts from the top forces and clans from the third and second universes were dumbfounded and fell into a dead silence. They never expected that this battle would fall into such an awkward situation before it even began. Although the upper echelons of the various clans knew about the existence of the 11 immortal old monsters hidden in the dark, even now, they never doubted that the demon race would lose this battle. But most of the other bottom-level experts did not know about this. Seeing that the originally good situation had evolved into such a speechless situation in the blink of an eye, these bottom-level experts of the various clans and top forces almost all had a sense of depression in their hearts. Chapter 40:13. Ayo! Oh. In the void, howls that sounded like the howls of wolves resounded without end, and they came from the central region where the three camps fought. There, over 5 million native ferocious beasts had transformed into bandits that wreaked havoc in the void, and they were mercilessly plundering. There were originally tens of millions of lifeless corpses in the void. Most of them were the bloodline true bodies of experts of various races other than the human race. They were incomparably huge, but for these millions of native beasts, it was not a problem at all. In just a short 10 minutes, all the corpses were divided up by nearly 6 million native beasts and stored in the storage space in their bodies. As for the corpses of the human race experts, according to Xianxia's instructions, these native beasts did not touch a single one. Right now, all the bloodline true body remains of the experts of every race had been divided up. 2 or 3 of these native beasts were in charge of each warship, pushing or pulling the 2.5 million undamaged fortresses in the void toward the opposite side of the Abyss Devil's camp. This scene was reflected in the eyes of countless experts of the two camps on the other side of the void chasm, and immediately provoked a wave of curses. Too sullen. The demon race and this group of native beasts were in cahoots with each other. It was simply shameless to the point of making one's hair stand on end. In the 2.5 million strongholds of various sizes, tens of millions of experts of various races were first destroyed in a single blow, and then even the corpses left behind did not have a good ending. Except for about a quarter of them, they were too inconspicuous. They were probably disdained because they felt that there was not much meat left, so they were not brought along. Outside, the bloodline true bodies of the countless experts of various races, without exception, were divided up by these millions of native beasts in the blink of an eye. Seeing how their eyes were glowing with greed when they were dividing up the corpses, it was likely that they would take some out and feast on them when they returned. But this was not the end. They killed people and lost the corpses. In the end, these shameless fellows did not even let go of the 2.5 million strongholds that had been reduced to ghost warships. They dragged or pulled, and all of them were moved to the opposite camp. This opening battle was simply infuriating. Originally, they had intended to give the demons a tight slap in the face. But in the end, not only had they lost tens of millions of powerhouses from various races, but they had also allowed the demons to pick up 2.5 million fortresses of various sizes for free. This was simply an act of bolstering the enemy before the battle. When they thought of this, the countless experts of the two camps felt like dying. Many of them were so angry that they spat out blood on the spot. All of this, no matter how big or small, was witnessed by the 11 immortal realm old monsters in the void tens of millions of miles behind the two camps. Although the conventional battle power was at a disadvantage at the beginning, the originally favorable situation turned into a passive situation in the blink of an eye. There was even a half-step immortal from the various camps of the second universe that was suppressed because of this. However, these 11 undyings weren't moved at all. From their point of view, the deciding factor of today's battle was the high-level undyings. The main task of the normal battle force was to represent the various races and pinnacle powers after the entire demon race was annihilated. It was just to fight for their own interests. Although the conventional battle power was at a disadvantage at the beginning, at least the demon's younger brother, Mo Jinfeng, had shown up. As long as he was there, they would be able to force out the demon ancestor that they regarded as a great threat. A bunch of trash. They have an army of more than 50 million battleships. It's just the start of the battle and they've already turned the situation around. And they've only sent out one person. This battle is simply a classic failure. The demon's younger brother, Mo Jinfeng? As expected of one of the four monstrous geniuses, known as the #1 existence among the younger generation. This battle was indeed breathtaking and remarkable. In the end, he's just relying on external objects. His own strength is too weak. He's only at the 3rd level of the Star Lord state. I heard that he has the bloodline ability of the ancient ape demons and a bloodline ability similar to the 9 changes of the Lion Fury of the Battle Lions. He can perform the 4th change and become a 3rd-level domain lord in an instant. Now, it seems that the immortal realm old man of the Federation has indeed been killed by him. That golden time war scroll is very amazing. After it's activated, it can manifest the power of the laws of time in the universe. Judging from how the half-step immortal realm expert of the Inji clan was on the verge of death after one wave of the tide, it seems that the purple tide is a purple tide. Each wave of the purple gold tide should represent the instantaneous passage of 30,000 years of time. 30,000 years in a single tide? Even us immortals can't withstand 3 waves. This is indeed a great killing weapon, capable of killing immortals. However, according to this old man's calculations, that time war talisman can at most trigger 3 more waves of similar purple gold tides. In other words, this demon brother Mo Jinfeng, that demon's younger brother, Mo Jinfeng, still has the ability to suppress an immortal realm expert. But that's all. Apart from the time war scroll, he has 3 other battle scrolls. The void war scroll he used just now is useless, and the weeping soul war scroll he used first seems to only have the power for 1 attack. Although its power covers a wide range, it can only roar at existences below the universe realm. It's only a slight disturbance to us immortals, but it's completely negligible. Give the order. Stop the starship battle for now. Let the half-step immortal realm experts intercept Mo Jinfeng and force him to consume the 3 waves of purple tide of the golden time war scroll. That's right. That's indeed a threat. Once the demon's grand ancestor shows up, we'll definitely take action. That Mo Jinfeng has such a great weapon that can threaten us. I'm afraid something unexpected will happen. Although we still can't turn the tables, we're all honorable existences. Even if we're only lightly wounded by this ant-like junior, we can't accept it. It's too shameful. If we can force the demon's grand ancestor to show up, that'll be even better. This battle can end in a short time. After a round of discussion, the 11 immortal realm experts' orders were quickly passed to the higher-ups of their clans through their secret channels. At this moment, the millions of indigenous beasts led by the immemorial porcupine and the immemorial turtle had already pushed the 2.5 million fortresses back to the demon's camp. There were some corpses of human warriors left in the void. Other than that, there were some wreckage and fragments of various battleships. However, these things were all slowly drifting in one direction. 8 turbulent void streams with a diameter of 3 to 4 million miles released a suction force that was devouring these remains. Presumably, it wouldn't be long before this vast central region battlefield would once again be as empty as a washing machine. Roar! Chapter 40:14. Roar! An earth-shattering roar resounded. The half-step immortal warrior of the Battle Lion race stepped out of a flagship fortress of the Second Universe and showed his bloodline true body. Even his race's 9 transformation lion race's innate ability was fully activated at the first moment. Blood Ferocious Lion. 5th change. Roar! With his last roar, the half-step immortal lion of the Battle Lion race, Lian Feng, once again expanded in size. In an instant, he reached an astonishing level, and even Yi Xian was shocked. His 9 changes of the demonic ape had been derived from the 9 changes of the wild lion bloodline technique of the Battle Lions. Their power and effects were basically the same. There wasn't much difference between them at all. When Yi Xian performed the 4th change of the demonic ape, he would have a demonic ape true body with an astounding amount of blood. He would be 100,000 meters tall, which meant that he would be 300,000 meters tall. He would be as big as a planet like a small shooting star. The fifth change of the demonic ape would be 10 times bigger on the basis of the fourth change, but the absorption system hadn't figured it out yet. It was the same for the fifth change of the wild lion. It would be 10 times bigger on the basis of the fourth change. Lian Feng, the half-step immortal lion of the wild lion clan, had performed the fifth change of the blood-ferocious lion. He would eventually reach a height of 1,000,000 meters. 10 million zhang, which was 3 million meters high, was 3,000 kilometers wide. It was like a small star. Countless starry sky experts in the three camps outside the central domain battlefield were all dumbfounded. For a moment, the void was filled with the sound of people inhaling cold breaths like a tide. Roar! Little bastard Mo, come out and face your death. The roar made the void tremble. Although Lian Feng was only half-step immortal, he had reached the immortal state with the help of the fifth change of the wild lion bloodline, which was the same as Yi Xian's 9 changes of the demonic ape bloodline technique. He couldn't have been more ambitious at that moment, because the person he was challenging was merely an ant in the Star-Lord state. However, Shi Lianfeng didn't feel awkward at all. Although Mo Ju Feng's cultivation base wasn't strong, he had killed immortal realm old monsters before. Just now, he had mercilessly suppressed a half-step immortal realm old monster. Without a half-step immortal cultivation base or above, no one was qualified to challenge such an existence. You want to challenge me? Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a bright light, and his heart was instantly filled with fighting spirit. He said in a clear voice, "All right, my cultivation has risen too quickly recently, and I need a fierce battle to temper myself. Since that's the case, this king will challenge the immortal realm today." As soon as these words were spoken, the devil cultivator camp behind them immediately went into an uproar. A Star-Lord against an immortal state expert? This was more than just a one-on-one battle. Furthermore, it wasn't just a one-on-one battle. After the Star-Lord level, there were still the Domain Lord level, Sector Lord level, Universe grade. This was a one-on-one battle that exceeded 3 whole realms. This was definitely unprecedented. However, it was going to happen that day. It was destined to be earth-shattering. Just when everyone was dumbstruck, Yi Xian had already activated the demonic ape bloodline in his body. His human form instantly transformed, and an ancient demon ape that was over 30 meters tall with 3 heads and 6 arms appeared in the air. His cultivation soared from the 3rd level of the Star-Lord realm to the 8th level. Then, he performed the 9 changes of the demonic ape bloodline technique. 9 changes of the demonic ape. First change. Amidst the violent roar, the ancient demon ape, which was 100 feet tall, suddenly grew in size. An inexplicable bloodline power instantly surged in its body, converging into a tide-like power. The ancient demonic ape's 3 true forms were greatly enhanced. In the blink of an eye, the 30-meter-tall ancient demonic ape grew to 100 meters tall. Cultivation strength. Peak of the 9th level of the Star-Lord state. The last roar was heard. 9 changes of the demonic ape. Second change. This roar shook the entire area. The 3 heads of the ancient demonic ape raised their heads and roared at the same time. A corner of the void trembled slightly, and its bloodline true body expanded 10 times in an instant, reaching a height of 10,000 feet. Its cultivation aura soared again because of that. This time, it surpassed the peak of the 9th level of the Star-Lord state and reached the 1st level of the Region Lord state. In just 2 breaths, Yi Xian's cultivation strength had increased by a level. He was now a Star-Lord and a Region Lord. However, that wasn't his end. If Yi Xian was willing, he could perform the 3rd and 4th changes of the 9 changes of the demonic ape. His body would soar to 100,000 meters, and his cultivation would reach the 3rd level of the Region Lord state. However, he didn't make such a choice. While the 1st level of the Region Lord state was 2 levels higher than the 3rd level of the Region Lord state, Yi Xian's demonic ape true form would reach a height of 300,000 meters under the 4th change of the demonic ape true form. Even though his vitality had increased by countless times, his agility was still lacking when compared to his current size. He was restrained too much. The immortal lion of the Berserk lion race had reached a height of 3 million meters under the 5th change of the Berserk lion race. Even if Yi Xian were to perform the 4th change of the demonic ape true form, he would still be far inferior to it. Since that was the case, why should he compete with his opponent in terms of size and physical strength? He was destined to lose. It was better to maintain his size at around 3 kilometers, which was the 2nd change of the demonic ape true form. In that way, His cultivation would be able to surmount an entire realm and attain the Region Lord state from the Star Lord state, yet he wouldn't lose his agility. This was Yi Xian's choice. He'd already decided to fight this immortal berserk lion in a wandering battle. The opponent's body was over 1,000,000 meters tall. Although its blood and qi were so abundant that it made one's hair stand on end, it was definitely lacking in terms of flexibility. Yi Xian's cultivation was relatively weak, so a wandering battle was the most suitable method. However, even though this enormous lion didn't possess the ability of a true Eternal Realm expert because it was merely at the half-step Eternal Realm, and it was only because it executed the 9 changes of the Berserk Lion and activated its bloodline, causing its vital blood to rise explosively and enter the Eternal Realm. However, its physical strength and vital blood were truly at the Eternal Realm. On the other hand, Yi Xian was merely at the Region Lord Realm under the second change of the demonic ape true form, and there was a gap of 2 realms between them. It could be said that he wouldn't even be able to endure a single slap from the immortal lion, and he would definitely perish on the spot if he was struck by it. So, even if Yi Xian had decided to move about, he still couldn't lack the necessary protection.